Chapter 231. Outside Ill-Wind Valley. Chen Qingyan, wearing an azure veil, held her snakeskin scabbard and stared at the valley with her clear, bright eyes. Time passed quickly. After Yu Yuan entered Ill-Wind Valley, she could no longer sense or track his movements. The nether flame poison stream formation and the second layer of miasma had blocked her vision and spirit sense. She could only wait passively. Dark Moon City, Yu Yuan, she had many questions in her heart, so she didn't leave in a hurry. She wanted an answer. Only if Yu Yuan came out alive would she know the answer. She suddenly turned around, her eyebrows slightly raised with a puzzled expression. She sensed that many people were rapidly approaching, as if they knew that something had happened in Ill-Wind Valley. Among them was Lu Zaihe, who had almost died from poison. A moment later, a middle-aged man wearing a feathered crown and extremely well-dressed appeared in her line of sight. The man rode a snow-white crane and wore a luxurious silver robe. At first glance, he looked like an immortal. "Uncle Sure," Chen Qingyan called out softly, her beautiful eyes filled with joy and surprise. "Why have you come in person?" The man was Shi Yuxuan, the current sect master of the Heavenly Medicine sect. He was a late Yin spirit and a heaven-grade alchemist. "I heard that something had happened in Ill-Wind Valley, so I came as soon as possible." Shi Yuxuan's expression was serious as he threw out a pill furnace as soon as he arrived. The pill furnace expanded in the wind, and clusters of auspicious purple clouds bloomed on its surface, releasing brilliant rays of light. Under Chen Qingyan's gaze, the pill furnace seemed to have transformed into a furnace mountain that was hundreds of meters tall in a very short time. Supported by the auspicious purple clouds, the pill furnace burned fiercely. The pill furnace flew in the sky above Ill-Wind Valley, and below it was a thick miasma that couldn't be dispersed. Suddenly, a rain of fire fell from the sky. As the sect master of the Heavenly Medicine sect, Shi Yuxuan wanted to break the nether flame poison stream formation as soon as he arrived. He wanted to go inside and figure out the situation. After him, many more people came in one after another. Some of them were cultivators of the Heavenly Medicine sect, and many of them were seniors from the various empires who were accompanying their juniors in the alchemist examination. There were also a few strangers that Chen Qingyan didn't recognize. He guessed that they were from the Tianyuan continent or the Tranquil continent. The news of the great change in the Evil Wind Valley had probably spread like wildfire. Soon, everyone would know about it. Among the crowd, the descendant of King Weiling, Lu Zaihe, looked as if he had just recovered from a serious illness. When Chen Qingyan looked at him, Lu Zaihe's face was filled with bitterness as he sighed softly. All the members of the Hu clan had died, and he couldn't escape the responsibility. Yu Yuan had warned them and tried to persuade them with good intentions. Unfortunately, because of his appearance, the Hu clan chose to ignore his advice and insisted on going to Ill-Wind Valley. As a result, many of the Hu clan's guest elders and clansmen had died in the Chilly Wind Valley. Some of those who had fled had also died as the poison had taken effect. He, Lu Zaihe, had relied on other methods to survive. How could he not feel guilty at all? Phew! Hoo-hoo! In the depths of the Chilly Wind Valley, multicolored miasma surged like living creatures, quietly dissolving the rain of fire from the pill furnace. Shi Yuxuan's eyes were grim as he frowned and continued to exert force. As the miasma flowed and gathered above him, Chen Qingyan, who was gifted with extraordinary talent, was suddenly able to vaguely see some traces of what was going on in the valley. This was because the thick miasma in the second layer of the nether fire poison stream formation had become thinner due to the flow. Chen Qingyan cultivated a miraculous spirit art and had an item on her, so she could see a thing or two. She first searched for Yu Yuan in the valley. Then, she noticed a familiar yet blurry figure sitting in a cave in the deepest part of the Chilly Wind Valley. He swung his legs and seemed to be talking about something carelessly. The person talking to him seems to be, Chen Qingyan's eyes narrowed into a thin line. She could see fine, long, and dazzling sword light blossoming from the thin line like lightning. Mei Qiurong of Xuantianzong. Why would that narrow-minded woman appear in the chilly Wind Valley? Also, what did Yu Yuan say to her? She also cultivated in the Tianyuan continent and was the most famous disciple of the sword sect. She had seen Mei Qiurong a few times at some grand event. After recognizing Mei Qiurong, she was even more curious as to why Yu Yuan and Mei Qiurong would be at each other's throats in the chilly Wind Valley. Inside the valley, the miasma moved abnormally, and the colorful poisonous mist scattered around the edges of the valley suddenly flew into the sky. A rain of fire had already fallen, but the people in the valley did not know. What they could see was that, after the miasma moved for a while, a cold and dark will suddenly locked onto Mei Qiurong. Mei Qiurong's mind changed drastically. Crack! Streaks of white lightning seemed to streak across the smoke and clouds. Before Mei Qiurong could react, a 7 to 8 meter long bone that was as translucent as white jade stabbed towards her like a sharp blade. Whoosh whoosh whoosh. At the same time, deep within the thick miasma, 3 wide streams of miasma, one green, one black, and one purple, stretched straight towards Mei Qiurong. "Lend me a hand." Mei Qiurong looked up at the sky and suddenly shouted. She wanted the 3 people from the lightning firmament divine hall, as well as the cultivators who were willing to listen to her, to fight together with her. She had never imagined that the abomination hidden within the miasma would inexplicably change its mind. Ignoring those with lower realms, it would take her as its first target and eliminate her first. This did not conform to her previous understanding. Long Tianxiao. After giving the order, Mei Qiurong thought of another person. It's changed its mind. We're all targets, so we have to work together. I know you still have some tricks up your sleeve. You should be able to tie it down for a while. Sorry, but I'm afraid I can't help you. In the distance, Long Tianxiao laughed mischievously. You're mistaken. Its main target, as well as its only target, is you. I don't sense any malice from it at the moment, so I'll wait and observe. You can't live from the evils you bring upon yourself. Yu Yuan stood at the entrance of the cave and said in a sarcastic tone, "Everyone, if you want to die first, you'll have to accompany her. Otherwise, there's no harm in waiting. She's strong enough, so she should be able to eat her fill." Yu Yuan pointed at the indistinct figures outside the valley. The heavenly medicine sect's people seem to have arrived. Be patient and wait a bit longer. Perhaps you'll be able to survive. This was a blatant attempt to drive a wedge between them. As for those cultivators who had been trying to curry favor with Mei Qiurong not long ago, they hesitated because of his word. If there was a chance to live, who would be willing to die? Mei Qiurong's status was high. She came from the Xuantianzong of the Tianyuan continent. No one dared to offend her. But what if she died in the next moment? While they were hesitating, the attacked Mei Qiurong had already used one of the Xuantianzong's secret arts, the profound heaven divine shadow art. She transformed into numerous shadows that darted through the valley. Each shadow contained the aura of Mei Qiurong's flesh, blood, and soul. It was extremely difficult to tell which one was the real her. Even the one in the miasma and smoke couldn't figure out which one was real at the first moment when Mei Qiurong used her secret technique. Her method was also very simple. Other than the 3 rivers of smoke clouds, more than a dozen streams of poisonous fog suddenly separated from the sky, from the poisonous fog outside the valley, and from the smoke clouds, and headed towards all of the Mei Qiurong. There was no need to tell which one was the real one. Any one of them had to be killed. Yu Yuan. Out of the many Mei Qiurong, 3 of them suddenly changed directions and shot towards the careless Yu Yuan at the entrance of the cave. Long Tianxiao's expression changed. After a moment of hesitation, he suddenly flew into the valley. The first time Mei Qiurong had attacked, she had been too casual. She hadn't used her full strength. Long Tianxiao knew that now that Mei Qiurong was prepared, she truly wanted to kill Yu Yuan. She had many methods. He was afraid that Yu Yuan wouldn't be able to block her. Chapter 232. The three Meiqurongs wore the same clothes and looked the same, but their expressions and actions were different. One Meiquorong wielded a sword that was like a clear spring. As she swung it, it shone with a dazzling green light. There was another Meiquorong, her clothes fluttering in the wind. Her hands formed a seal and she shouted, "Phoenix cry!" A golden phoenix spread its wings and condensed from her flesh aura and soul will as she changed her hand seals. It was lifelike and dazzling with golden light. The golden phoenix's wings were almost 10 meters wide and shone with sharp golden light. The third Meiquorong had a cold expression. She stood still and looked at him, saying, "Soul guidance." Sitting at the edge of the cave, Yu Yuan, who was swinging his legs, smiled strangely and said, "Xuantianzong he." Whoosh. Strange sounds came from the caves around him that looked like a hornet's nest. They were emitting colorful poisonous smoke. The bright yellow light shield of the nether fire poison stream formation seemed to be pulled over in an instant. Clusters of flames appeared out of nowhere inside the light shield and floated towards him. Among them, there was a ball of green flames that crackled and burned. Midway, it suddenly transformed into a green burning monster that pounced on Meiquorong, who was holding her sword. The sword-wielding Meiquorong made crackling sounds. Both the sword in her hand and herself were ignited. That Meiquorong was burned to ashes in an extremely short time. The second Meiquorong, a golden phoenix formed with a spirit art, spread its wings and flew high. It crashed into the invisible barrier and let out an angry cry. Yu Yuan smiled. The invisible barrier suddenly shone brightly, and many crisscrossing fine lines appeared. The fine lines wrapped around the golden phoenix like rope. The fluttering golden phoenix looked as if it was caught in a net. No matter how it struggled, it could not take another step forward. In next to no time, the golden phoenix exploded into a rain of golden light that covered the sky. The third Meiquorong was completely unaware of the other two's deaths. She was still staring at Yu Yuan. An unusually strong attractive force suddenly appeared 3 inches above Yu Yuan's head. Yu Yuan's expression finally changed slightly. He thought, "Xiantian Yu Whirlpool." 3 thumb-sized dark spots that were invisible to the naked eye were hovering above Yu Yuan's head in a triangular formation. As they rotated, they created a suction force of their own. This attractive force targeted Yu Yuan's sea of awareness, heaven, earth, and human souls. The barrier that could isolate the golden phoenix and prevent Meiquorong from crossing it did not have any effect on the third Meiquorong's profound heaven Yu Whirlpool. Profound heaven abyss vortex was a famous soul technique of Xuantianzong. When Meiquorong used it, the effects were immediate. Yu Yuan was no longer swinging his legs. His face was trembling, and there seemed to be electric sparks running through his black hair. He felt a dull pain in his head. In his perception, he felt as if an invisible hand had reached into his head from the top of his head, trying to grab his 3 souls and pull them up with all its might. He had a feeling that once his 3 souls left his body and fell into the profound heaven Yu Whirlpool, they would be annihilated in an instant. In his previous life, he had heard of the terror of Xuantianzong's soul technique. Even the cultivators of the Devil's Palace and the Goblin Temple were extremely fearful of the profound heaven Yu Whirlpool. Legend has it that the profound heaven Yu Whirlpool did not come from Xuantianzong, but was created by another sect. After being cultivated by a sage of Xuantianzong, it was improved by many Xuantianzong experts with painstaking efforts. It turned into a powerful soul technique of Xuantianzong, becoming their sharp blade to intimidate their enemies. If he wanted to use the profound heaven Yu Whirlpool, he would at least be a Yin spirit. Once he succeeded, he would be able to pull out the other party's 3 souls. The first Xuantianzong to master this technique had once used the profound heaven Yu Whirlpool to strip the souls of the great demons of the Goblin Temple one by one and instantly kill them. It was said that when the profound heaven you whirlpool reached large success, if the caster could reach the carefree realm, even the other party's yin spirit and yang spirit could be twisted out and killed. Only when the main soul had transformed into a primordial spirit could it completely ignore the pull of the profound heaven you whirlpool. Phew! Huff huff! Yu Yuan panted heavily, his eyes fierce and crazy, and looked at the third Mei Chiurong. Pft! 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 Inside the chilly wind valley, one after another, Mei Chiurong was chased by the smoke it released and turned into ashes. Every time a Mei Chiurong disappeared, the remaining Mei Chiurong's aura would become even stronger. This meant that the traces of Mei Chiurong turning into ashes were only to gather the scattered energy once again into other illusions. The third Mei Chiurong's expression suddenly changed as she used the profound heaven you whirlpool. At this time, Long Tianxiao rushed over from another direction. Without the slightest hesitation, he let out a dragon roar at Mei Chiurong. An azure dragon roared out along with his roar. Another Mei Chiurong coldly looked over and said, "You're courting death." Boom! A palace nearly 100 meters tall and bathed in 7-colored light flew out of Mei Chiurong's sleeve for some unknown reason. The palace came crashing down with the force of 10,000 caddies. The azure dragon Long Tianxiao had summoned was smashed into the ground by the palace. It scattered into countless strands of qi blood that rapidly disappeared. The palace once more soared into the sky, shining with dazzling light as if it was the home of a god. It once more smashed toward Long Tianxiao. Being illuminated by that dazzling light, Long Tianxiao's human-headed dragon body was like ice under the blazing sun, quietly melting away. Long Tianxiao painfully screamed. He no longer cared about Yu Yuan and immediately flew away without looking back. The palace that stood in the air emitted a dazzling radiance that was awe-inspiring. Mei Chiurong made a grabbing motion, and the palace flew into her hand, transforming into a seal. The Heavenly Palace Seal. Over at the Guifu school's side, Guan Xianyun's expression was grave. He had originally thought of this, but now he forcibly discarded it. There are a total of 9 Heavenly Palace Seals. They correspond to those floating palaces in the Xuantianzong. Jin Fan took a deep breath. His expression also changed. Just what is Mei Chiurong's background? I've never heard of such a person in the Xuantianzong before. To be able to hold a Heavenly Palace Seal, her background is definitely not ordinary. Guan Xianyun looked up at the sky. No wonder she's so fearless. No wonder she dares to run amok in Evil Wind Valley. So she's holding a Heavenly Palace Seal. The Heavenly Palace Seal. Is she holding one of the 9 Heavenly Palace Seals in Xuantianzong's legend? How could it be fake? The Lightning Firmament Divine Hall's cultivators, as well as the cultivators who had jumped out and declared their allegiance to her, were all roused. Looking at each seal in her hand, they were incomparably excited. At this moment, only 2 Mei Chiurongs remained in Evil Wind Valley. One Mei Chiurong continued to use the Xiantian Abyss Vortex to target Yu Yuan. She wanted to draw out his 3 souls and kill him. The other Mei Chiurong was holding the seal. She was standing back to back with the one who had attacked Yu Yuan. Holding the seal, she looked at the people in the valley, then looked up at the poisonous mist in the sky. She didn't show much fear. With the Heavenly Palace Seal in her hand, she was full of confidence. Yu Yuan felt his scalp turn numb. Looking at the 2 Mei Chiurongs, he finally understood. The one who had used the Xiantian Abyss Vortex was Mei Chiurong's Yin spirit. She was a pure soul, and her previous qi and blood were just a cover. Holding the Heavenly Palace Seal, her main soul and heavenly soul had been controlling the seal to injure Long Tianxiao and force him to flee. She hadn't merged with the Heavenly Palace Seal. As soon as she took out the Heavenly Palace Seal, the poisonous mist was easily dispersed by her. The poisonous mist was unable to approach her. That was where her confidence came from. Heavenly Palace Seal. While Yu Yuan was struggling to suppress the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and human with a splitting headache, he was shouting in his heart. Chapter 233. The Xuantianzong of the Tianyuan continent was a world-famous miracle in the Hauran continent. Xuantianzong was located in the 9 heavens and consisted of 9 palaces. Each of the 9 palaces was as large as a mountain, majestic and solemn. Xuantianzong's palaces were also known as the Heavenly Palaces because they floated in the air. The 9 heavenly palaces were also a unique formation. The 9 Heavens Divine Palace Formation. The 9 Heavens Divine Palace Formation was the highest grade 7 formation. According to legend, each of the Xuantianzong's 9 Heavens Divine Palace Formation had a seal as the core of the formation, which was used to drive the 9 Heavens Divine Palace Formation. The 9 seals were called Heavenly Palace Seals and corresponded to the 9 heavenly palaces. No matter how far away they were, as long as they were in the Hauran continent, any Xuantianzong disciple who held a heavenly palace seal could use the seal to mobilize a portion of the corresponding heavenly palace's power. Depending on the cultivation of the seal holder, the power they could wield was naturally different. Xuantianzong, as one of the 3 great sects of the Tianyuan continent, would only fully activate the 9 Heavens Divine Palace Formation when they were in an all-out war with the Tranquil Continent. At that time, the 9 heavenly palace seals had to be placed in each of the palaces in Xuantianzong. Other than that, the 9 heavenly palace seals were scattered. Any one of the heavenly palace seals held great significance to the Xuantianzong. Those who held a heavenly palace seal were either highly trusted by the sect or had made great contributions to the Xuantianzong. Only then were they worthy of holding a heavenly palace seal. The Heavenly Palace Seal was both a symbol of status and a proof of power. The vast majority of Xuantianzong cultivators who held a Heavenly Palace Seal could easily settle many things as long as they took it out. Whether it was the Qianxian continent, the Tianyuan continent, or even the Tranquil continent, the Heavenly Palace Seal often had miraculous effects. In the southern part of the Tranquil continent, the Medicine God sect, the Tongtian Trading Company, and the Tool sect also gave face to the Heavenly Palace Seal. Because the seal holder represented the Xuantianzong, the Sword sect, Primal Yang sect, and other sects of the same level would attach great importance to them. The 7 great sects and the empires of the Qianxian continent would treat them with even more caution. Only the powerful demons from the Devil Palace and the Demon Palace would dare to act recklessly in front of the seal bearers. But the Heavenly Palace Seal Holder, and Xiantian, of Xuantianzas, of the Xuantianzong Xian continent, the Heavenly Palace Seal. But now that the Heavenly Palace Seal had appeared, Long Tianshao had been defeated, and Mei Churong had stood there proudly, the evil Wind Valley's people suddenly realized that Mei Churong wasn't necessarily afraid of that thing in the miasma, because she had a Heavenly Palace Seal. Xuantianzong Ong. He, of Xuantian of course, was of the. Please forgive me. After he made his stand, the others who had been stunned by Yu Yuan's words began to panic. They all knelt down. Many of them were not much weaker than Mei Churong in terms of cultivation base. His age was much older than the others, but in front of Xuantianzong and the Heavenly Palace Seal, they could not muster the slightest thought of rebelling. They begged for Mei Churong's forgiveness in an incomparably humble manner. On the other side, Guan Xianyun, Jin Fan, and the other evil path cultivators who had been watching coldly were silent. If it was just Xuantianzong, an unknown cultivator, they might not be so afraid. But after the Heavenly Palace Seal appeared, everything changed. Even if Mei Churong was not famous before, the fact that she had the Heavenly Palace Seal meant that she had a special status in Xuantianzong. Mei Churong was definitely not to be underestimated. Guan Xianyun hesitated for a moment, then whispered to Jin Fan, "Now that the Heavenly Palace Seal has appeared, let's give up on the Poison Masters in Ill Wind Valley." Also, he pointed to the top of his head. Even if it breaks free, it might not be able to defeat Mei Qiurong, who has the Heavenly Palace seal. It's best if we distance ourselves from it and say that we don't know anything about it. Jean Fan sighed with a long face and nodded helplessly. They had thought that the 3 Yin spirits from the Guifu school would be able to do whatever they wanted in Beefing Mountain Range. After all, the current sect master of the Heavenly Medicine sect, Shi Yuxuan, was only at the late Yin spirit stage. His cultivation base and strength were only on par with theirs. Who would have thought that so many things would happen? Now, Xuantianzong not only showed up, but also took out a Heavenly Palace seal. The situation in the Chilly Wind Valley was instantly reversed. It was no longer under the control of the poisonous miasma, and could do whatever it wanted. Yu Yuan, right? Mei Qiurong's Yin spirit had stopped the Xiantian Yu vortex for a moment. Now that her main body took out the Heavenly Palace seal, her Yin spirit seemed unusually relaxed. I'm curious. At the entrance of the cave, Yu Yuan only felt that his 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man were suddenly restrained. He didn't feel like he was about to fly away. He knew that Mei Qiurong was curious and wanted to know something through him. The Xiantian Yu vortex was too terrifying. Once his 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man left his body and entered it, they would be annihilated in an instant. Not a trace would be left. In that case, all the memories imprinted in his earthly soul would be completely erased. There would be nothing left. Mei Qiurong wouldn't be able to find anything through him. The Xiantian Yu vortex was a soul-destroying technique, not a soul-searching technique. I'm curious. You're only at the spirit-nurturing stage. Why is your heavenly soul so strange? Mei Qiurong narrowed her eyes and sized him up with her Yin spirit. It shouldn't be. You shouldn't have been able to hold on for so long. Under the effect of the Xiantian Yu vortex, let alone a spirit-nurturing stage cultivator, even a subtle stage cultivator shouldn't be able to withstand it. The 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man should have instantly left his head and entered the Xiantian Yu vortex to be annihilated. But Yu Yuan had held on for so long. She had great confidence in the Xiantian Yu vortex, but she couldn't understand how Yu Yuan, who was only at the spirit-nurturing stage, was still alive and barely able to keep his 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man in his sea of consciousness. This didn't make sense. Boom! As he spoke, the Heavenly Palace seal left his hand again and turned into a majestic palace in the sky. Clang! Clang clang! The 3 long and narrow bones, which were as translucent as jade, were hit by the palace, producing a crisp sound of metal clashing. Dazzling light splashed out, and then they retreated back into the miasma. For the first time, no new bones fell from the sky. Hidden within the miasma, the Heavenly Palace seal didn't have any effect on it. It seemed to know that it wouldn't be able to easily kill Mei Qiurong. With the Heavenly Palace seal present, the poison mist was unable to approach her. Now that Yu Yuan had warned it, Mei Qiurong, who it had viewed as its primary target, had suddenly become a huge problem. She seemed to be a bit difficult to kill. Long Tianxiao, are you willing to follow me as a servant and become a guest elder of my Xuantianzong? Mei Qiurong's main body, with her main soul and heavenly soul, had the Heavenly Palace seal above her head. She coldly looked at the burly man with a human head and a dragon body. I know a little about your background. I know you were once suppressed. I thought you had died long ago. I didn't expect you to still be alive. Since you're alive, you should have some value. The palace formed by the Heavenly Palace seal flew toward Long Tianxiao. Countless rays of light shot out of the palace, illuminating Long Tianxiao. The evil wind valley was only so large, and Long Tianxiao was only a small part of it. Long Tianxiao howled as he was enveloped by the light of the Heavenly Palace seal. His body grew from small to 100 meters long, and his golden scales shone so brightly that they seemed solid. Bathed in the light of the Heavenly Palace seal, Long Tianshao howled in pain and humiliation. He clenched his teeth and didn't make a sound, enduring the torture of his soul body. I'm asking you a question. On the other side, Mei Qiurong was multitasking. She used her Yin soul to face Yu Yuan. What method did you use to refine your heavenly soul? If it weren't for your heavenly soul being so strange, who knows how many times you would have died with my sect's profound heaven whirlpool. Refining my heavenly soul, Yu Yuan's eyebrows rose as he suddenly thought of the extreme wisdom soul tempering art. He remembered that after leaving the forbidden land of the fallen moon continent, he had been able to cultivate the extreme wisdom soul tempering art as long as he focused. Furthermore, he had been able to form a subtle connection with the 4 ancient black characters at the bottom of the soul-refining pool. The reason why Xuantianzong's profound heaven whirlpool hadn't been able to pull his 3 souls out was because his heavenly soul was so strange and powerful that it was able to suppress the suction force and maintain its consciousness. In a sense, his heavenly soul seemed to be able to slightly suppress the profound heaven whirlpool. The extreme wisdom soul tempering art originated from the Shunhun sect. Before the Shunhun sect had been destroyed, the soul-refining pool had been the product of the Shunhun sect, the soul-refining pool, which was the 4th greatest sect in the Hauran continent. A bolt of lightning suddenly flashed through Nie Tian's mind. Yu Yuan took a deep breath and ignored everything else. He began to cultivate the extreme wisdom soul-tempering art and sensed the soul-refining pool. All of a sudden, an incomparably profound soul connection was established between him and the 4 simple, black characters from afar. Chapter 234. The Heavenly Palace Seal. There's a Heavenly Palace Seal in the Chiliwind Valley. Which master of Xuantianzong is it? It's really the Heavenly Palace Seal. Outside the valley, a group of cultivators from all over the Beefing Mountain Range looked into the mist-shrouded valley. The majestic and solemn palace was shining with divine light. Even the miasma and smoke couldn't hide it. Xuantianzong. A seal-bearer sneaked into the Chiliwind Valley. The current sect master of the Heavenly Medicine sect, Shi Yuxuan, exclaimed. He took a deep breath. It was hard to tell whether he was happy or nervous. Obviously, even as the sect master of the Heavenly Medicine sect, he didn't know that a Xuantianzong cultivator had secretly sneaked into the Beefing Mountain Range. Xuantianzong, Guifu School, and many other powerful cultivators, what were they trying to do? The seal-bearer is Mei Qiurong of Xuantianzong. Chen Qinyan held the snakeskin scabbard and stood beside him, reminding him softly. At this moment, the people outside the valley still couldn't see the inside of the valley. They couldn't see the details of the situation inside the valley. They didn't know how many people were alive and how many people died. After the Heavenly Palace seal turned into the majestic and solemn palace, it shone brightly. It was too exaggerated. Only then could they recognize it. The rest of the people outside the valley couldn't see. Xuantianzong, Mei Qiurong? Shi Yuxuan frowned. He turned to look at her and said, "This name sounds very strange. Why does she have a Heavenly Palace seal? Also, what's her cultivation base? What's her background in Xuantianzong?" She was originally at the Soul Wander realm. After she was seriously injured, she fell to the Yin Soul realm. Chen Qinyan hesitated for a moment and said, "Uncle Shi, I don't know much about her. I just heard from my master that she has been doing some secret things for Xuantianzong all these years. Because of this, her cultivation base fell. Although her cultivation base fell, it seems that she did what Xuantianzong wanted her to do. She suddenly appeared in Xuantianzong. In order to reward her, Xuantianzong gave her a Heavenly Palace seal so that she could protect herself and quickly return to the Soul Wander realm. She should be cultivating in Xuantianzong. Why did she suddenly appear in the Beefing Mountain Range in Chiliwind Valley? In the end, Chen Qinyan asked Shi Yuxuan, "Uncle Shi, what is hidden in the Chiliwind Valley? Why are there so many cultivators trapped in the valley? Also, why was the formation protecting the valley so poisonous? The heavenly medicine sect shouldn't be good at this kind of array formation. After he finished speaking, Shi Yuxuan's mouth was full of bitterness and helplessness. He said, "It's a long story, so I won't talk to you for now." Inside the valley, thousands of miles away, when Yu Yuan, who was in the chilly wind valley of the Beefing Mountain Range, tried to practice the extreme intelligent soul-tempering art, his heavenly soul vaguely sensed that the bottom of the soul-transforming pool was suppressing the existence of the four ancient black words, tunnel to the outer realm. A mysterious soul connection was established in an instant. A sorrowful feeling suddenly spread from Yu Yuan's body. He was like a hero at the end of his road, unwilling to part with the world. Strangely, Yu Yuan's three souls, which were affected by the profound heaven-abyss vortex, were firmly rooted in his sea of consciousness. They were no longer harmed in the slightest. The confusion, panic, fear, and uneasiness in his eyes were replaced by clear calmness. He just looked at Mei Qiurong. Mei Qiurong's expression changed slightly. She didn't immediately react. Her true body was still targeting Long Tianxiao, controlling the palace formed by the heavenly palace seal. Under the light of the palace, Long Tianxiao's flesh split open and smoke rose from his body. This was the evaporation of his soul energy and soul will. If there was no outside interference, then Long Tianxiao would have been refined by the heavenly palace seal. There wouldn't be the slightest trace of his existence left. Due to the restriction of the netherflame poison stream formation, he was unable to escape from the chilly wind valley. Now he was also trapped by the palace. His body shrunk as if his soul was being burned. He howled in pain. The cultivators of the Lightning Firmament Divine Hall and the Guifu schools Guan Xian Yun and Jin Fan were all silent, not daring to say a word. Mei Qiurong's actions were clearly to make an example out of him. Even the strongest Long Tianxiao was powerless in front of the palace formed by the heavenly palace seal. What about them? Who had the confidence to be able to face the heavenly palace seal unscathed? Whatever. In the end, she's Xuantianzong. She also has a heavenly palace seal. Being a slave can't count as a disgrace. Under the threat of death, Long Tianxiao sighed. He made his decision. He was going to do as Mei Qiurong said. He would put down his pride and become a slave and serve Mei Qiurong. All he asked for was a path to survival. But just as he was about to beg for mercy, his expression suddenly shook. He noticed that the hands of Mei Qiurong's Yin divinity were trembling violently as it cast the incantation. Long Tianxiao was also startled to see that Yu Yuan, who had just been in unbearable pain, was once more swinging his legs. Yu Yuan's eyes were cold and contained icy, killing intent. The dense five-colored smoke suddenly surged. After being silent for a moment, it seemed to be controlling the thick clouds as it began to descend. It descended towards the towering palace that was as solemn as a mountain. The dazzling and resplendent light emitted by the palace was instantly drowned out by the toxic smoke and covered by it. Long Tianxiao's dissipating soul will and soul energy suddenly stopped. There was no longer the pain of his soul being burned, which tormented and melted him all the time. He was instantly freed. Clang! Clang! The ear-piercing sound of metal colliding rang out from within the smoke-covered palace. Mei Qiurong's true body's expression finally changed. She hastily shouted, "In spirit, return!" The heavenly palace seal had been attacked. If she wanted to unleash even more of its power, she had to return her three souls to her body. She had to circulate her qi, blood, and spiritual energy in conjunction with her soul will. Now that it had attacked with its full power, Mei Qiurong couldn't control Yu Yuan anymore. Her Yin spirit had to immediately return to her body. But, to her horror, she suddenly realized that her out-of-body Yin divinity was actually restrained by Yu Yuan as soon as it flew into her fleshly body. A strange aura filled with sorrow quietly lingered around her own spirit, causing it to be unable to enter her body at the first moment. The existence of the strange aura made it impossible for her own divinity to merge perfectly with her flesh and blood. Mei Qiurong's shock was no small matter. What made her even more flustered was yet to come. Yu Yuan, who was standing at the entrance of the cave, leaned to the side and grinned at her own spirit. He said, "Master Mei, have a good taste of the astral wind." Mei Qiurong's expression suddenly changed. In the next moment, she sensed that the astral wind that she had been so afraid of but couldn't find its source was blowing out from the cave Yu Yuan had been in all this time. It was invisible, but it truly existed. The astral wind whistled towards her own spirit. "Who are you?" Mei Qiurong screamed. Author's note: I ate something bad. From morning until now, I've pooped 7 or 8 times. I'm completely exhausted. Chapter 235. Mei Qiurong could not help but be shocked. The profound Heaven Yu whirlpool, which had always been successful, suddenly lost its effectiveness on Yu Yuan. Her own soul that controlled the profound Heaven Yu whirlpool was somehow tainted with a sorrowful intent. It could not return the own soul to its original position to control the heavenly palace seal. That was not all. Who would have thought that the cave Yu Yuan was sitting in was the source of the Enchi astral wind? She knew better than most of the people in the valley just how terrifying the Enchi astral wind was, as if it could scrape bones and corrode souls. Others might be afraid of the miasma, afraid that they would be harmed by it. However, as she held the Heaven Palace seal in her hand, she actually didn't feel much fear or panic towards that thing or the various kinds of toxic smoke. What truly made her uneasy, as if she was sitting on pins and needles, had always been the Enchi astral winds. Whoosh! Formless gusts of chilly wind blew into the cave through the space that Yu Yuan had made way for Nie Tian. A ghastly and cold aura came from afar and quickly spread. Ah! A late-stage, subtle realm cultivator from the Hui Yao Empire was the first to be hit by the Enchi astral wind between her and Yu Yuan. He, whose own soul had not yet formed, opened his mouth wide and panted violently as if he was about to die. In the subtle realm, his Naiwen acupoint in his upper dantian was open, and the Enchi astral wind invaded his body. His soul consciousness flickered with icy lightning. His soul thought was ignited and transformed into eerie, ghostly flames. He screamed as blood flowed out of his 7 orifices. It was a horrible sight. "It's that terrifying formless astral wind. Heavens! Run! Why is that kid called Yu Yuan unharmed?" Amidst the screams, the cultivators from the Qianxian continent who were near Mei Qiurong no longer cared about anything else and scattered in all directions. Seeing the Enchi astral wind, and under the threat of their lives, they chose to leave Mei Qiurong. Because they could all see that the target of the Enchi astral wind was Mei Qiurong. The baleful astral wind is indeed a powerful weapon. Yu Yuan grinned. Especially when it comes to dealing with those who have opened their Naiwen acupoints in their upper dantian, cultivated their spiritual sense and soul, and have the Een spirit to forge them. They can use the Een spirit to wander. Naturally, he knew that the seemingly invisible Enchi astral wind would unleash terrifying power once it touched a soul. The Enchi astral wind originated from the cold abyss of the 9 underworlds. The astral wind contained the cold energy of the cold abyss of the 9 underworlds, as well as the so-called geocentric astral thunder that was hidden thousands of miles underground. Both the geocentric astral thunder from the frigid depths of the 9 hells and the heavenly thunder that the lightning element sect cultivated and gathered from the thunder pool of the 9 heavens had deadly offensive effects on souls. Geocentric hard thunder mixed into the Enchi astral wind and carried the extreme coldness of the 9 hells' frigid abyss, making the Enchi astral wind even more powerful. Unlike the heavenly thunder of the thunder pool of the 9th heaven, the lethality of the Inchi astral wind was no longer significant to those who had reached the yang spirit realm. As for the heavenly thunder, after being refined and condensed over and over again, it had miraculous effects on yang spirits, freedom spirits, and even nascent spirits. When the Inchi astral wind was formed naturally, it only contained a small amount of geocentric astral lightning. It was extremely difficult to gather and refine. However, due to the special nature of the astral wind, it could easily fly into the naiwan of the upper dantian and cause devastating damage to the soul. In the later stages, the lethality of the Inchi astral wind might not be as great as the heavenly thunder that had been repeatedly refined by a grand cultivator. However, to those below the yang spirit realm, the nuance, yin spirit, and soul wander realms, the Inchi astral wind was much more effective than the heavenly thunder. Even if Mei Chiurong's realm had fallen to the yin spirit realm, she would still be crushed to death by the Inchi astral wind even if she was still at the soul wander realm. As for the cultivators that had rushed into the valley, their realms were all between these three realms. They just so happened to be completely suppressed by the Inchi astral wind. Whoosh! Mei Chiurong, whose yin spirit was unable to return to her body, saw that the situation was bad and suddenly flew in Long Tianxiao's direction with her true body. That place was the furthest away from Yu Yuan, who was in the deep valley. Mei Chiurong, one illusory and the other real, moved dozens of meters in an instant. She used this to avoid the Inchi astral wind. As soon as she moved, everyone began to panic. Other than the cultivators from the various empires who had been fawning over her, the Guifu school's Guan Xianyun, Jin Fan, and a few other evil cultivators also began to panic. Each one of them did their best to avoid Mei Chiurong so that they wouldn't be caught in the crossfire. Fuck! Long Tianxiao had just managed to escape from the light of the heavenly palace seal with great difficulty. Seeing her fly over, he couldn't help cursing. Mei Chiurong had rushed over to him. Naturally, she thought that he had some friendship with Yu Yuan. Furthermore, the Inchi astral wind was blowing in a large area, so she used him as a cover. He was also unable to dodge the Inchi astral wind. He had to endure the terror of the Inchi astral wind with Mei Chiurong. Mei Chiurong was doing this in hopes that Yu Yuan would have some compassion. Whoosh! The Inchi astral wind that came from the Omphalos suddenly changed direction midway and rushed towards another person. In the next instant, the Guifu school's Jin Fan let out a miserable shriek. Jin Fan's spiritual sea was instantly ignited by the Inchi astral wind. His spiritual sea burned, and lightning roamed within it, crazily destroying everything. A yin spirit on the verge of death, riddled with holes, shattered within his spiritual sea. In the eyes of others, Jin Fan's eyes, ears, and nose were all bleeding. There were also wisps of green smoke coming out of his body. His eyes were filled with despair, but it was quickly replaced by emptiness and stupefaction. Guan Xianyun, who had also come from the Guifu school, didn't even say a word when the Inchi astral wind changed direction midway. He had silently fled. He had abandoned Jin Fan. Then, in another direction, he frowned and looked indifferently at Jin Fan's miserable appearance. He watched as Jin Fan's life was taken away by the Inchi astral wind. After a few seconds of silence, Guan Xianyun clasped his hands towards Yu Yuan from afar and said, "Although I'm also from the Guifu school, I've been wandering outside for years. I don't know what's going on in the sect. This time, it was Cho Wan and Jin Fan who invited me to the Jade Peak mountain range with the sect's warrant. I don't know about the personal grudge between Cho Wan and Jin Fan, and I don't want to get involved." He actually took the initiative to distance himself. Seeing how powerful the Inchi astral wind was, he, who also practiced the incantations of the Guifu school, made a prompt decision to say that he had nothing to do with the matter between Cho Wan and Jin Fan, and that Yu Yuan shouldn't blame him for it. When he said this, he had actually revealed a fact unknowingly. The one who controlled the Inchi astral wind was now Yu Yuan, and not that thing in the miasma. Yu Yuan looked at him with a warm smile, but didn't reply. In just a moment, Jin Fan crashed to the ground, his 3 souls having been incinerated. Guan Xianyun was still in a state of panic. He had been paying attention to the Yin-Chi astral wind the entire time. When he saw that the soul-destroying astral wind hadn't come for him, he sighed in relief. As expected, Long Tianxiao bitterly smiled. Sensing Mei Qirong's unease, he knew the Yin-Chi astral wind had finally come. Just as Guan Xianyun had said, the Yin-Chi astral wind was under Yu Yuan's control. Then the current movement of the Yin-Chi astral wind meant that it hadn't chosen to let Mei Qirong off because of him. I'll take it one step at a time. He suddenly used the illusory soul art, completely transforming into a dragon. He circled around the edges of the Netherflame Poison Stream formation, trying to get as far away from Mei Qirong as possible. Seeing him move, the 2 Mei Qirongs split into 2 and also fled. But without their 3 souls combined, that floating palace was unable to contend against the Yin-Chi astral wind within the miasma. Within the depths of the miasma, the Yin-Chi astral wind brandished its white bone blade, striking the palace. Each strike was like a chisel on Mei Qirong's chest. Mei Qirong's true body would occasionally stumble as it fled. It was clear that he was constantly being injured. Chapter 236. The Yin-Chi astral wind was coming out of the dark cave. As for Yu Yuan, he had been sitting at the entrance of the cave, swinging his legs as he talked. Even now, Yu Yuan was still at the entrance of the cave. He had only moved to the side to allow the Yin-Chi astral wind to blow through. Poison Masters, standing in the cave, he frowned slightly. Looking at the deep valley, he secretly sensed the caves that led underground. Were the Poison Masters who had been imprisoned by the Heavenly Medicine sect and committed evil deeds in the Qian continent still alive? He pondered this question. There was one thing that Long Tianxiao and Guan Xianyun had been mistaken about. The one controlling the Yin-Chi astral wind was not him, but that person within the miasma. He had only reached a tacit understanding with that person because of Mei Qirong. Whatever he was thinking, that person would be able to see through him at the first moment and react accordingly. The Yin-Chi astral wind's target was indeed him, and it was constantly changing. But the one controlling it was not him. Xuantianzong's Mei Qirong suddenly appeared in Evil Wind Valley with a heavenly palace seal. There must be a secret behind this. Yu Yuan no longer paid attention to Mei Qirong. As he pondered, he continued to comprehend the extreme intelligent soul-tempering art, maintaining a secret connection with the strange space beneath the soul pool. He had many questions in his heart. First of all, the moment he visualized the extreme wisdom soul-forging technique and established a connection with the 4 simple black words in the strange space, Mei Qirong's profound heaven-abyss whirlpool instantly lost its effect. His 3 souls were able to break free from the profound heaven-abyss whirlpool's pull and remain firmly in his sea of consciousness. That was too inconceivable. Xuantianzong's killing move that targeted the soul was the profound heaven-abyss whirlpool. In his previous life, he had heard of it and knew just how powerful this soul art was. He knew that many giant devils and greater demons had been unable to do anything to it. Their souls had been forcibly pulled out and instantly annihilated. At the very least, Mei Qirong was at the Yin spirit stage. He had experienced the might of her Yin spirit when she cast spells. Why did Xuantianzong's wondrous soul spell suddenly lose its effect the moment he established a connection with the 4 ancient black words, "Extreme wisdom will be hurt," in the strange space below the soul-transforming pool? Rumor has it that the Xiantian abyss vortex didn't come from Xuantianzong, but from another sect. One of Xuantianzong's ancestors accidentally cultivated this technique and studied it thoroughly. After being improved and strengthened by a great cultivator of Xuantianzong, it evolved into the Xiantian U vortex, which became the peerless technique of Xuantianzong. Another sect. Yu Yuan pondered for a moment and gradually understood the hidden profoundness. If I'm not mistaken, the so-called other sect is probably the Shinhan sect. A cold smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, as he instantly understood. As a former great sect of the Tianyuan continent, before it was destroyed, the Shinhan sect's foundation and strength were even greater than the Xuantianzong's. The Shinhan sect's various soul spells were originally the strongest in the human world, and their might shocked all living beings on 3 continents. The secret technique that one of Xuantianzong's ancestors obtained most likely came from the Shinhan sect. Since the origin of the Xiantian abyss vortex came from the Shinhan sect, and the one who left behind the white paper fan and the 4 words, "Extreme wisdom will be hurt," was an expert of the Shinhan sect, and the soul-transforming pool was the crystallization of the Shinhan sect's wisdom. Of course, it wouldn't be affected by the Xiantian abyss vortex. After all, in a sense, the person who cultivated the extreme wisdom soul-tempering art and condensed his selim also came from the Shinhan sect, and was the orthodox of the Shinhan sect. Soon, Yu Yuan came to such a conclusion. Why did Mei Qiurong come to the Chilly Wind Valley? My arrangements in the Chilly Wind Valley were extremely hidden. Logically speaking, Xuantianzong shouldn't have known. Could it be because of it? No, it hasn't been long since it broke free from the swamp, so Xuantianzong couldn't have received the news in such a short time. If it wasn't because of it, then there must be something else in the Chilly Wind Valley that attracted Xuantianzong. Could it be those poisoners who I don't know whether they are dead or alive? Yu Yuan frowned deeply. At this time, Mei Qiurong's true body was unknowingly covered in blood. Blood streaks appeared on Mei Qiurong's skin, and her appearance was simply too horrible to look at. In the depths of the thick miasma, every attack from the unknown object on the palace seemed to stab her body, and she couldn't bear it at all. While dodging the chilly wind, she couldn't concentrate to continue adding magic power to the heavenly palace seal. In addition, because the Yin soul was eroded by strange emotions, it couldn't return to its original body. Even if she stopped, it would still be difficult for her to control the heavenly palace seal. Thunder Firmament Temple, Mei Qiurong, who was bleeding non-stop, suddenly looked at the 3 cultivators from the Thunder Firmament Temple with a strange light in her eyes. Under her gaze, the 3 of them felt an inexplicable chill in their hearts. Master Mei. The tall old man holding the yellow gourd laughed dryly and said, "It's not that we don't want to help, but there's really nothing we can do." He, who called himself the Thunder Firmament Temple's Grand Elder, held the yellow gourd tightly with his 5 fingers and bowed to Mei Qiurong. He was afraid of offending Mei Qiurong and making her unhappy. He was afraid that she would settle accounts with him later. He was also worried that he would be targeted by that thing in the miasma and die tragically in an instant. You can still help a little. Mei Qiurong's true body was still flying, but her Yin soul suddenly turned into a ray of light and flew towards the Thunder Firmament Temple's Grand Elder. Mysterious heaven swirl. She used the same wondrous soul art again. This time, her target was no longer Yu Yuan, but the Thunder Firmament Temple's Grand Elder. The Grand Elder's expression changed as he said in a trembling voice, "Master, what do you mean by this?" As he spoke, he was about to open the yellow gourd he was holding. However, before he could do that, Mei Qiurong's mysterious heaven swirl enveloped him. "Come out!" Mei Qiurong shouted. 7 dark dots of light suddenly appeared above the Grand Elder's head and condensed into a deep, strange hole that could devour souls. A strange suction force suddenly appeared. ZZZT. Under the 7 gloomy light spots, the space above the great elder's head was distorted, and terrifying ripples appeared. Like a goldfish caught in a net, the Grand Elder's Yin spirit suddenly flew out. The golden Yin soul suddenly flew into the 7 dark dots of light and disappeared in a flash. After that, the heavenly soul and the main soul that were unable to transform into the yang god and the primordial spirit were forcefully pulled out one after another. In the next breath, they also fell into the mysterious heaven whirlpool and disappeared without a trace. Whoosh! Before the other two from Thunder Firmament Temple could react, Mei Qiurong's true body suddenly appeared in front of the Grand Elder. She used the mysterious heaven swirl with her Een soul to melt and refine the Grand Elder's 3 souls. She continued to cast the spell. His true body came over and snatched the yellow gourd. He took a deep breath and said, "Such a precious item, and it came from the Thunder Firmament Sacred Hall. If I'm not wrong, it should be the essence of lightning refined by the Thunder Firmament Sacred Hall." The 2 cultivators from Thunder Firmament Temple turned pale with fright and stared at her. Since Thunder Firmament Temple has such a deep relationship with the Thunder Sect, you should know the relationship between the Thunder Sect and our Xuantianzong. Mei Qiurong looked coldly at the 2. For Thunder Firmament Temple, the death of a Grand Elder isn't unacceptable. You 2 are also elders of Thunder Firmament Temple. After his death, you can take over his position. Lend me this gourd of lightning essence for now. As soon as she finished speaking, she took out a piece of yellow paper from the dead Grand Elder's chest. The yellow paper covered his palm like a glove. In an instant, golden light flowed out of the yellow paper and dripped down between her fingers like water. She pulled out the stopper of the gourd. Then, she grabbed the gourd and poured it down. Whoosh! Rumble! Streaks of azure lightning came out of the gourd's mouth with explosive thunder. "Even if he's dead, I still have to make the best use of it," Mei Qiurong muttered. She stretched out her hand and pressed down on the first elder's chest. Then, she pulled hard. A beam of mixed flesh aura that contained a violent lightning aura was pulled out of the gourd's chest. In an instant, streaks of azure lightning filled Mei Qiurong's surroundings and gave rise to ear-splitting thunderclaps. Crackle! Lightning flashed and thunder rumbled around Mei Qiurong. Countless streaks of light appeared and died out in an instant. The area where Mei Qiurong was sometimes filled with bright light and sometimes dark. Frigid gales mixed with earth-core thunder blew over and clashed with the numerous lightning bolts from the thunder pool outside the realm, causing them to explode one after another. Holding the yellow gourd, Mei Qiurong drained the Grand Elder of Thunder Firmament Temple of his flesh aura and watched him fall limply to the ground. She didn't feel the slightest bit apologetic. Instead, she arrogantly went to instruct the other 2 from the Thunder Heaven Divine Hall. "Listen to me. When we come out of Ill Wind Valley, the Thunder Heaven Divine Hall will remember your contributions." The 2 of them seemed to be at a loss. Thunder Firmament Temple is under the command of the Lightning Element Sect, and the Lightning Element Sect and Xuantianzong have been allies for many years. Mei Qiurong let out a cold harumph. "I hold the Heaven Palace seal, and my sect has placed high hopes on me. This time, I came to the Jade Peak mountain range with the sect's heavy responsibility. Once I succeed, my sect will reward me handsomely. As long as I put in a few good words for you from the Lightning Element Sect, the Lightning Element Sect will inform Thunder Firmament Temple. Because of me, the 2 of you will be appointed as Grand Elders by the sect, and will be handsomely rewarded. However, if anything happens to me in Ill Wind Valley, when Xuantianzong investigates the matter, none of you will be able to escape punishment." She threatened and enticed. "As you wish, Grand Master." The 2 Thunder Firmament Temple experts were also at the Een Spirit stage. However, after their Grand Elder had been killed by Mei Qiurong with the Dark Heaven Whirlpool and oppressed by her with Xuantianzong and the Lightning Element Sect, they couldn't summon the slightest desire for revenge. No matter how dissatisfied they were, the 2 of them lowered their heads in the end, indicating that they were willing to continue listening to her orders. Howren, the 3 continents, and the complicated relationships between the many sects had created this strange situation. The checks and balances between the strongest sects and the weaker ones were this terrifying. Due to their relationship with the lightning element sects like Thunder Firmament Temple didn't dare to resist Xuantianzong's bullying of Mei Qirong. They could only endure the fact that their Grand Elder had been killed. The ill wind is no longer a threat to me. Holding the yellow gourd, Mei Qirong took a deep breath and began to summon her Yin spirit. Yu Yuan had already come out of the cave where the ill wind was blowing out. Somehow, he had appeared in a cave that led underground. He looked down at the cave and murmured, "All the poison masters are dead. The smell of blood permeates the air. It feels a little familiar." Chapter 237. The underground cave in Ill Wind Valley had cells that imprisoned many poison masters in the history of the Heavenly Medicine sect. The reason they didn't kill them was because those poison masters were famous alchemists of the Heavenly Medicine sect before they switched to the art of poison pills. Furthermore, they had made great contributions to the sect. Later on, due to various reasons, they began to study the art of poison, but the Heavenly Medicine sect didn't want to kill them all. The reason they were imprisoned and allowed to live peacefully in their later years was because the Heavenly Medicine sect remembered their contributions and treated them well. With the existence of the Nether Fire Poison Stream formation, and the Heavenly Medicine sect listing it as a forbidden area, no outsiders were allowed to enter Ill Wind Valley. Even within the sect, there were very few people who knew the inside story of Ill Wind Valley. They didn't know that there were poison masters in the history of the Heavenly Medicine sect hidden in the valley. Others might not know, but as the sect master of the Medicine God sect in his previous life, Yu Yuan naturally knew. When he personally came to the Jade Peak mountain range, he purposely came to Ill Wind Valley several times. The Nether Fire Poison Stream formation was secretly built under his instructions and guidance by combining the power of the Heavenly Medicine sect and the Medicine God sect. Even the Yin Qi astral wind was brought out because of him. Therefore, in terms of familiarity with Ill Wind Valley, he was even more familiar with it than the current sect master of the Heavenly Medicine sect, Shi Yuxuan. He stood at the entrance of the underground cave and looked down with rapt attention, sensing with his heavenly soul. He didn't know if it was because he was visualizing the extreme wisdom soul tempering art, or because of the mysterious connection with the soul transforming pool, but his perception suddenly increased in Ill Wind Valley. Because of this, he determined that there were no longer any living people in the underground prison. The poison masters in the history of the Heavenly Medicine sect who were imprisoned below had all been reduced to dried corpses. Their blood and qi had been sucked clean. A faint smell of blood spread from the underground. Smelling it, he actually felt a sense of familiarity. He suddenly turned around and looked at Mei Qirong, who was holding a yellow gourd and surrounded by lightning, making it difficult for the Yin Qi astral wind to approach her. From Xuantianzong, holding the Heavenly Palace seal, appeared in the Jade Peak mountain range. After muttering to himself, he lowered his head again and looked at the underground cave. Clang! All of a sudden, dazzling white light shot out from the depths of the miasma like a long rainbow. With a loud boom, the majestic palace that had been transformed from the Heaven Palace seal plummeted to the ground. The solid ground was smashed into rubble. The palace that should have stood tall in the void fell to the ground. Mei Qirong's lips split open and blood gushed out. Go! She pointed the yellow gourd in her hand at the incoming Yin deity. Pipa! Several green lightning bolts turned into mystical blades of light and cut the invisible threads of emotion around the other Mei Qirong. The sadness that lingered around Mei Qirong's Yin spirit was taken away like a veil that covered her body. Mei Qirong's Yin divinity was finally able to return to her true form. The moment the Yin spirit entered her body, Mei Qirong calmed down. She took out a dark red pill and swallowed it. She said, "The Heavenly Medicine sect is raising evil creatures in the Chilly Wind Valley. Inside the valley, there are also Yin Qi astral winds. I think this sect has been living a good life in Qian continent for a long time and has begun to run amok in the dark. Phew. Phew phew phew. All of a sudden, the miasma and smoke that had been surging in the air quietly converged. Everyone, including Yu Yuan, fixed their gazes on the sky. The first thing that appeared in the air above the chilly wind valley was the translucent, sparkling bones. The translucent bones looked as if they had been carved out of beautiful jade crystals of various colors. They shone with dazzling light, giving people a feeling that they were extremely beautiful and unreal. The multicolored bones spread out like a fan, like a multicolored peacock spreading its tail. The dazzling divine light came from the pieces of 7-colored, sparkling, translucent bones. The multicolored miasma and smoke surged and gathered at the joint. This allowed everyone to understand a fact. Those seemingly beautiful joints actually contained a terrifying poison within them. They were the most beautiful, but also the most poisonous. A short, dark, skinny, and shriveled little girl quietly appeared in the middle of the bones that looked like a peacock spreading its tail. The little girl was dark and small, with a flat nose, a sharp face, and a pair of green eyes that emitted a light that made people's hearts turn cold. She looked to be in her teens. Her waist and chest were covered in a crystal-like shell. Compared to the beautiful, translucent bones that looked like a peacock spreading its tail, she looked a bit ugly. It was as if she didn't match the beautiful, fan-shaped bones on her back. She hovered in midair, her emerald green eyes filled with indifference. She looked down at the human cultivators below the valley, looking at Long Tianxiao, Guan Xianyun, and Mei Qirong. Every one of them had an uncomfortable expression when she looked at them. Mei Qirong, who had been in high spirits just a moment ago, had her Yin spirit back in place. Now that she was looking at her, she felt a bit uncomfortable and lost her confidence. Mei Qirong snorted and made a grabbing motion with her other hand. The palace that had fallen to the ground immediately shrank, turning back into the heavenly palace seal and flying back into her palm. I didn't come to Ill Wind Valley for you. Mei Qirong coldly looked at the short, dark, and ugly girl. I shoulder the heavy responsibility of the sect. I came to Beefing Mountain Range to find something else. It just so happened that he came to Ill Wind Valley and is hiding in the underground prison. The girl didn't reply. After hesitating for a long time, she finally looked at Yu Yuan. The pair of cold green eyes changed unpredictably in an instant, giving birth to many strange emotions. Her green eyes seemed to contain endless grievances, resentment, longing, and resentment. With just a glance, countless complex emotions were revealed. As for her, when she looked at the others, there was only coldness. Yu Yuan, who was looking at her, had bitterness and helplessness in his eyes. Through her eyes, he could see those emotions, which made Yu Yuan feel extremely guilty. She had always been waiting for him. She had always viewed him as a nurturer, as a father. But she had waited for him for over 300 years without any news. She had felt that she had been abandoned for more than 300 years. She had been confined by the spell formation in the depths of the swamp, unable to see the sun all year round. She couldn't even go out to look at the sky. She had longed for him to appear, to rescue her, to take her out of the swamp, and to take her away. She had only been disappointed and regretful over and over again. For hundreds of years, every time a living being passed by this place, she had been full of hope, thinking that it was him. But in the end, finally, she no longer expected, no longer longed, and no longer fantasized about relying on external help. She no longer waited. Relying on her unique bloodline, she began to seek relief under the swamp in her own way. She wanted to walk out and ask for an answer. Why hadn't he come, arranged for her to stay in the swamp, and made a promise to her? Resentment grew in her heart. Their eyes met. Looking into her eyes, Yu Yuan didn't need to say a word to know what she was thinking. She could even vaguely sense the subtle changes in her state of mind during the past 300 years. Endless regret and helplessness rose in Yu Yuan's heart. He wanted to explain. It wasn't that he didn't want to come. It was just that his reincarnation had gone wrong, and his time had been delayed. A bitter smile also appeared at the corner of Yu Yuan's mouth. He suddenly realized that this dark-skinned, short fellow had grown in a way that was different from what he had imagined. She had grown into a high-level living being that even he couldn't believe. Fizz! All of a sudden, the blood of the dead Jean Fan and the Grand Elder of the Thunder Firmament Sacred Hall, who had been killed by Mei Chirong, magically flowed out of their bodies. It flowed to the cave next to them. It was as if there was something in the depths of the chilly Wind Valley that was absorbing their blood. Yu Yuan's gaze was forcibly interrupted by this sudden situation. "He's the one I'm looking for!" Mei Chirong shouted coldly. "Don't think that you can leave the forbidden land of the fallen moon safely after wreaking havoc in our Xuantianzong for so long. Anzan Shan, no matter where you hide, if we Xuantianzong find you, we'll kill you!" Anzan Shan! Long Tianshao exclaimed in shock. Yu Yuan took a deep breath and said, "Isn't it time for Seniorin to come out?" Chapter 238. Everyone's gazes instantly fell on the hole that led to the underground cave. Guan Xianyun and the other cultivators who coveted the treasures in the Evil Wind Valley were all baffled. Who was Anzan Shan? Mei Chirong from Xuantianzong had brought a Heaven Palace seal into the Evil Wind Valley not for the treasures of the Heavenly Medicine sect, but for Anzan Shan, who no one had ever heard of. Everyone was deeply shocked. She was like a peacock spreading its tail. Her sparkling and translucent bones were shaped like a fan. Her emerald green eyes didn't seem strange at all. She clearly knew that someone like Anzan Shan was hiding in the underground prison in the Evil Wind Valley. She could control the Yin-Chi astral wind and control the nether flame poison flowing formation. She was the master of all the restrictive spell formations in the Evil Wind Valley. She was born with an extraordinary sense of smell for all kinds of deadly poisons and flesh auras. How could she not know that there was a strange creature hiding in the Omphalos? In fact, she had been keeping an eye on Anzan Shan, who was hiding in the underground prison. Anzan Shan had originally been her final target. Her original plan had been to kill and devour Long Tianshao and Mei Chirong, and then kill Anzan Shan when she was in her strongest state. She didn't know that Anzan Shan had cooperated with Yu Yuan for a short period of time in the Forbidden Land of the Fallen Moons. Of course, she didn't know that Yu Yuan had played a huge role in Mount An's escape from the Forbidden Land of the Falling Moons and the Heaven-Sealing Soul Transforming Formation. "You!" Mei Chirong, who had just uttered a cold exclamation, was suddenly struck dumb by Long Tianshao and Yu Yuan's words. "How do you know Anzan Shan?" She had been cultivating in Xuantianzong for a long time, so she hadn't known about the changes in the Forbidden Land of the Fallen Moons. She had only come here because her sect's spiritual tool had detected the movements of Anzan Shan, who had been sealed in the Forbidden Land of the Fallen Moons. According to the investigation of the sect's artifacts, Anzan Shan was active in the Bifeng mountain range. With the Heavenly Palace seal in hand, she was ordered to come to the Bifeng mountain range for Anzan Shan. In the chilling Wind Valley, he had encountered that black skinny girl, Long Tianshao, Yu Yuan, and the others. Her job wasn't to seize the treasures of the Ill Wind Valley, or to make enemies out of the skinny, dark-skinned girl, who was wreathed in deadly toxins. Her job was to find Xingshan and imprison him with the spiritual tool given to her by her sect. Xuantianzong would never allow Anzan Shan to successfully escape to the tranquil continent and become a part of the blood god again. That was because Anzan Shan had secretly learned many of Xuantianzong's secret incantations. Now, even though his soul was incomplete, and he had become an inhuman being, Xuantianzong wouldn't allow him to teach those incantations to disciples of the blood god. Zlotsla! A scarlet, blood-colored figure shot out of the ground like a red lightning bolt. Everyone suddenly sensed an unusually dense blood power, and thus looked curiously at the entrance of the cave. Puff, puff, puff. Suddenly, 2 beams of blood-colored light shot out of the cave like sharp blades and pierced through 2 subtle realm cultivators from the Hui Yao Empire. As the blood-colored light left their bodies, their flesh aura, spiritual power, and essence were all sucked away with it. After those 2, the blood-colored light shot out of the valley and attacked the other cultivators with lower cultivation bases. For a time, the valley fell into chaos. The cultivators who had been afraid of the skinny, dark-skinned girl for a long time became Anzan Shan's target. The blood-colored light flashed through the air like a giant blood scythe being wielded by the god of death. Whether it was subtle realm or spirit realm cultivators, they couldn't do anything to the blood-colored light. No matter what kind of spirit item or powerful spirit art or soul art they used, they couldn't stop the 2 beams of blood-colored light. They could only watch as the 2 beams of blood-colored light zigzagged through the air and reaped lives. In an extremely short time, 3 more people were killed. Long Tianxiao, Yu Yuan, Mei Churong, and that dark-skinned girl weren't the first targets of the blood-colored light. They all watched as the blood-colored light pierced through the valley. One by one, the people in the valley died. What puzzled Yu Yuan was that Anzan Shan's soul aura didn't appear. Anzan Shan's body, which was a mixture of his soul and blood, seemed to still be underground. Mei Churong, who was clamoring to kill Anzan Shan, held the yellow gourd in one hand and the heavenly palace seal in the other, as if facing a great enemy. However, she didn't rush into action. She didn't stare at the 2 beams of blood-colored light. Instead, she looked around. It was as if there was a great threat hidden in the dark, in a blind spot. At the same time, outside the valley, Lu Zaihe, who was supposed to die with the Hu clan members, quietly took out a pill from his robes and swallowed it. The pill was grayish-brown in color, resembling a small heart with whiskers growing out of it. Strands of grayish-brown whiskers had been gently dancing in the wind before. The pill only appeared for an instant. However, both Shi Yuxuan and Chen Qinyan instantly sensed it. The expressions of the alchemists from the heavenly medicine sect also changed slightly as they looked at Lu Zaihe. One of them exclaimed, "Where did the pill in your hand come from?" Lu Zaihe, who had always been arrogant and cold, panicked slightly as he said, "It was given to me by my clan." "Impossible." Shi Yuxuan's expression was grim. "The dragon whisker poisonous heart pill definitely wasn't given to you by your clan. The descendants of King Wei Ling can't be involved in poisonous pills. Lu Zaihe, your talent in alchemy is extraordinary. You should have been recommended by my sect to cultivate in the medicine god sect. How did you end up on the wrong path?" "I was poisoned by the valley's deadly poison. Only by relying on this pill can I have a chance of survival," Lu Zaihe said. "I just want to ask you, where did this pill come from?" Shi Yuxuan asked again. Lu Zaihe clenched his teeth and remained silent. "Uncle Shi, let me borrow this Lu Zaihe," Chen Qinyan suddenly said. Shi Yuxuan was surprised. "What?" Before he could react, Chen Qinyan suddenly pointed the snakeskin scabbard at Lu Zaihe. A wisp of soft but tenacious sword intent was suddenly born from the snakeskin scabbard. Lu Zaihe, who had swallowed the dragonbeard poisonous heart pill, was instantly entangled by sword intent. Following Chen Qingyan's pull, he actually flew directly towards her. In an instant, Lu Zaihe was caught by her and pressed against the snakeskin scabbard. It was as if she was in front and Yu Yuan was behind her. "Let's go." Chen Qinyan patted him on the shoulder. Strands of grayish-brown dragon whiskers floated out of Lu Zaihe's body like soft willow branches. The strands of dragon whiskers weren't real, but were released by Lu Zaihe's qi blood and spiritual power mixed with the pill poison of the dragon whisker poisonous heart pill. Chen Qinyan, who had been standing in the valley and didn't dare to go deeper, suddenly used Lu Zaihe as a spear and shot towards the evil wind valley. The moment the strands of dragon whiskers approached the deep flame poison stream formation, the grayish-brown dragon whiskers suddenly extended crazily, as if they were dragging Lu Zihe and the snakeskin scabbard back. Chen Qingyan sneered, her 5 fingers forming a sword, and gently pointed. The strands of dragon whiskers, which had grown half a meter long, instantly became obedient, and couldn't move any more. Lu Zihe, on the other hand, suddenly lost a lot of weight as his cheekbones sunk in. It was as if more than half of his energy had been sucked away by the strands of dragon whiskers. Rip! Sparks of fire flew out of the bright yellow light shield of the deep flame poison stream formation and flew towards Chen Qingyan. The strands of dragon whiskers were controlled by Chen Qingyan's sword intent and helplessly stretched out, making contact with the sparks of fire and extinguishing more than half of them. The snakeskin scabbard carried Lu Zihe and suddenly pierced into the deep valley. Inside the valley, Yu Yuan suddenly felt something and looked towards a direction with a frown. A thought appeared in his mind. The dark and skinny little girl frowned slightly and unwillingly pulled in that direction with her small hand. With a casual pull, the poisonous mist in that direction quietly dissipated. Whoosh! An instant later, Chen Qingyan, who was standing on the snakeskin scabbard and holding Lu Zihe hostage, charged into the valley. As soon as she entered the valley, the poisonous mist behind her surged and filled up the empty space. The people inside the valley and the people outside the valley could see each other for a brief moment. Yu Yuan saw Shi Yuxuan, the heavenly medicine sect's alchemists outside the valley, and even more Qianxian continent's cultivators. Shi Yuxuan and the others also saw 2 streaks of blood-colored light flowing within the Evil Wind Valley. They saw Long Tianxiao, Guan Xianyun, and Mei Qiurong. There was also a handsome young man standing in the depths of the Evil Wind Valley. He had an indifferent expression and a handsome face. Who is that young man? Chapter 239. Who is that young man? The eyes of Heavenly Medicine Sect's current sect master, Shi Yuxuan, lit up as he gazed at Yu Yuan, who was in the depths of the valley. As the sect master of Heavenly Medicine Sect, he naturally knew where Yu Yuan was standing. The underground cave was the entrance to the prison cell. Imprisoned within the prison cell were countless poison masters who had committed the most heinous crimes in the history of Heavenly Medicine Sect. The only reason they were still alive was because Heavenly Medicine Sect remembered their past contributions and allowed them to enjoy their old age. Also, many of them had all kinds of strange pill toxins mixed in their flesh and blood. It was very difficult to kill them, so it was better to let them die of old age and digest all the toxins on their own. There were many caves and caverns in the valley, but Yu Yuan was standing in one of them. Yu Yuan, on the other hand, looked so young. However, Shi Yuxuan noticed that many of the grand cultivators in the Ill Wind Valley seemed to be paying attention to him. Even Chen Qingyan had turned to look at him the moment he had charged into the depths of the valley. Why was that? Shi Yuxuan, who had too many questions in his heart, saw that after Chen Qingyan and Lu Zihe entered, the thin miasma and smoke once again surged back into the valley. Ill Wind Valley was once again covered. Therefore, he turned his head to look at the several sect elders and disciples in charge of testing young alchemists and asked, "Who is that young man in the valley?" Everyone shook their heads and said that they had never seen him before. Shi Yuxuan was even more puzzled. Ill Wind Valley in Jade Peak mountain range had become a place where the people inside wanted to leave, but the people outside wanted to enter. Even Shi Yuxuan didn't dare to take the risk under the double obstruction of the deep flame poison stream formation and the thick poisonous smoke. However, Chen Qingyan rushed in with Lu Zihe. Yu Yuan. As soon as she stepped in, her eyes fell on Yu Yuan. Her face under the blue veil seemed to be smiling. Boom! Lu Zihe, who was pressed into the snakeskin scabbard, fell to the ground with a loud crash. His lips trembled and his face was pale. Many grayish-brown dragon whiskers grew out of Lu Zihe's flesh, making him thin and shriveled. His blood essence seemed to have been drained. Even his usually bright and clear eyes had lost their luster. Lu Ziha, who was lying on the ground, looked at the people in the valley, and felt a chill in his heart. He saw with his own eyes that the Hu clan's guest elders had been corroded into pools of blood the moment they stepped into Ill Wind Valley before the deep flame poison stream formation was activated. In the blink of an eye they had turned into white bones. The clansmen of the Hu clan, such as Hu Yu, were too weak to withstand the corrosion of the poison. Those who were lucky enough to escape accidentally inhaled the poisonous smoke into their lungs. In the end, they died one by one. Lu Ziha had survived was by relying on external items. For example, the asparagus poisonous heart pill he swallowed. After escaping with great difficulty, he was once again held hostage by Chen Qinyan and forced to break into this deadly foreign land. He really wanted to cry but had no tears. "Why are you doing this?" He looked up at Chen Qinyan from the ground, his heart full of bitterness and helplessness. Chen Qinyan descended from the snakeskin scabbard and held it with her jade-like hand as if she was holding a miraculous spirit snake. She greeted Yu Yuan. Hearing Lu Ziha's question, she said seriously, "It's just that I wanted to come in and take a look. You swallowed a dragon whisker poisonous heart pill. This pill happens to be able to absorb strange poisons, so I lent it to you. You're not afraid of my Lu clan's patriarch?" Lu Ziha asked. "King Wei Ling?" Chen Qinyan laughed softly and said, "First of all, my sect and my master are stronger than your ancestor. Secondly, you have a dragon whisker poisonous heart pill. This pill is not a good thing, and you said it was given to you by your clan. I think your clan will take the initiative to cut ties with you." Lu Ziha was speechless. "I don't care where you got the dragon whisker poisonous heart pill." Chen Qinyan didn't give him another chance to speak. "You're on your own now. I won't do anything to you in Evil Wind Valley, but I also won't care if you live or die." With these words, she walked straight into the depths of the valley, towards Yu Yuan's direction. The two blood-red lights were still slaughtering the cultivators in the valley under the control of the underground Anzan Shan. Chen Qinyan wasn't afraid at all. Holding the snakeskin scabbard, she even smiled at Xuantianzong's Mei Qirong. "Senior Mei, do you still remember me?" Mei Qirong, who was holding the yellow gourd in one hand and the Heavenly Palace seal in the other, had been looking at her ever since she had entered Evil Wind Valley. Mei Qirong, who had come with the Heavenly Palace seal on the Xiantian Pavilion's orders, had acted arrogantly towards the cultivators of the Thundersky Divine Hall, the Guifu School, Long Tianshao, and all the others. She didn't place anyone in her eyes. But when Chen Qinyan appeared, Mei Qirong finally frowned and restrained her arrogance. She forced a smile towards Chen Qinyan and said, "Girl, what are you doing in the Ill Wind Valley? Listen to my advice. Protect yourself. Don't mess around." She glanced at the skinny, dark-skinned girl behind her, who looked like a peacock spreading its tail, and said, "She's a monster that the Heavenly Medicine sect secretly raised in Evil Wind Valley. She's the most vicious creature in the Jade Peak mountain range. I can't see through her for now, but she's full of poison. You have to be careful." Furthermore, Mei Qirong sighed. "There's an evil cultivator who escaped from Xuantianzong in the underground of Evil Wind Valley. He's also very troublesome. Those two blood-red lights that are constantly killing people came from that evil cultivator. Your sword sect and Xuantianzong are both high-tier sects of the Tianyuan continent. I also respect your master very much. We should fight against a common enemy." The way she talked to Chen Qinyan was completely different from how she talked to everyone else. Even though Chen Qinyan was still young, and her cultivation base and battle prowess were far inferior to hers, because Chen Qinyan came from the sword sect, which was as famous as Xuantianzong, and had a powerful master, she immediately changed her attitude. "Thank you for your concern, Senior Mei. I only came to Evil Wind Valley to broaden my horizons." Chen Qingyan's manner was calm, neither arrogant nor humble. She glanced at the skinny, dark-skinned girl, her heart filled with curiosity as she thought to herself, "She's that thing in the miasma? She was the one who started the massacre in that other place? How does she know Yu Yuan?" With this thought, Chen Qinyan said, "Senior Mei, you can continue. Don't mind me. I'm just a bystander." Mei Qiurong was taken aback. Standing at the entrance of the underground cave and watching Chen Qinyan walk in, Yu Yuan had a strange expression on his face, but he didn't say anything. The rest of the survivors in the valley were all staring at the bloody light that was killing people with fear and uneasiness. They didn't have time to pay attention to Chen Qinyan. No matter who she was, how she came in, or what she wanted to do, they didn't care. To them, the bloody light that was being controlled by Anzan Shan and harvesting people's lives was the most terrifying thing. Only the skinny, dark-skinned girl looked back at her with an indifferent look when she came in and looked at her. Under her gaze, Chen Qinyan, who had been calm the whole time, felt her scalp go numb. Then, Chen Qinyan, who was walking towards Yu Yuan, deliberately took a detour. Chen Qinyan deliberately avoided her and walked towards Yu Yuan. Mei Qiurong looked at her and fixed her eyes on the two beams of bloody light, her heart burning with anxiety. When she passed by the skinny, dark-skinned girl, carefully avoiding the poisonous caves, and came to Yu Yuan's side, Mei Qiurong's expression finally changed. She asked in a low voice, "You know each other?" Chen Qinyan nodded and confidently said, "We just met outside the valley not long ago. Originally, the two of us should have come to Ill Wind Valley together, but because of the terrifying isolation poison array, I couldn't find a way to break it, so I stayed outside." "Just met?" Mei Qiurong muttered and suddenly said seriously, "Chen girl, that kid called Yu Yuan has a strange background. I suspect that he's related to the evil people of the Tranquil Continent. There are Qi astral winds in Ill Wind Valley, so the poisonous mist didn't attack him. Also, he's a vicious evil being secretly raised by the Heavenly Medicine Sect." She pointed at the skinny, dark-skinned girl and said, "I feel that she has some unclear connection with that Yu Yuan. Chen girl, you and I are both from the high sects of the Tianyuan continent. You must be careful not to be deceived by the evil people." Chen Qinyan laughed softly and raised her head slightly, revealing a small part of her neck that was as white as jade. Her white jade-like neck seemed to emit a misty white luster, making people feel that her face under the green veil must be a peerless beauty in the world. Yu Yuan looked at her and was dazed for a moment. He felt that her neck was too much for his eyes to take in. "There's no need for Senior Mei to worry." Chen Qingyan's tone suddenly became cold. Xuantianzong's Mei Qiurong was startled by her words and quietly shut her mouth. She knew Chen Qingyan's background all too well. She knew that Chen Qingyan's master had a bad temper and a strange temper. She had never interacted with Chen Qingyan before, but she felt that Chen Qingyan wasn't much better. Even if she had a heavenly palace seal, and her cultivation far surpassed Chen Qingyan's, she didn't dare to argue. She knew that Chen Qingyan's position in the Sword Sect and her future achievements would definitely surpass hers if there were no accidents. "She's the one with the miasma?" Chen Qingyan suddenly lowered her voice and stood side by side with Yu Yuan. With a curious look, she sized up the dark-skinned girl and asked, "Yu Yuan, do you know her? Is it because of her mother that you were able to enter the Ill Wind Valley?" At this moment, the survivors of the Ill Wind Valley were still in danger, and were all hiding from the bloody light. Mei Qiurong, who had rushed towards Anzan Shan, was injured. Even though she had the yellow gourd and the heavenly palace seal in her hand, she didn't rush to attack. It seemed that she was waiting for something. Holding the snakeskin scabbard, Chen Qinyan seemed to be full of confidence, as if she wasn't afraid of the powerful experts in the valley. After she asked this question, the short, dark-skinned little girl suddenly looked over with her emerald green eyes. Apparently, she attached great importance to Chen Qingyan's question. It could even decide the fate of many people in the valley, and the relationship between her and Yu Yuan. Other than Yu Yuan, no one understood that if he gave a wrong answer, everyone in the Ill Wind Valley might die here, including Yu Yuan himself. Only Yu Yuan knew that neither Mei Qiurong nor Anzan Shan were the most terrifying existences in the Ill Wind Valley. She was. Chapter 240. As soon as he opened his mouth, Yu Yuan paused, as if he was at a loss for words. He looked at her. Her emerald green, clear, and translucent eyes were like an icy lake hidden in a deep valley, isolated from the rest of the world, containing a bone-chilling coldness. However, as soon as Yu Yuan looked at her, a warm current seemed to be born in the depths of the ice-cold lake. She hadn't said a word since she appeared in the miasma. Many people in the valley guessed that since she was poisoned, even if she transformed into a human, she still wouldn't have the ability to speak. However, words could never restrain a high-level life form. She was a strange existence, an outstanding product of heaven and earth. She could express everything she wanted to with just her eyes. The meaning in her eyes was far more direct than words. At this moment, the nervousness, anticipation, fear, and uneasiness in her eyes were so obvious. What exactly is she afraid of? Chen Qinyan could see many emotions in her eyes. Suddenly, he felt an inexplicable heartache for her. He felt that the dark-skinned little girl who had transformed into a human seemed to have endless grievances, as if she had once endured countless lonely, dark days and nights without the light of day. She was naturally intelligent, and her intuition was extraordinary. From the depths of those emerald green eyes, she saw many things that ordinary people couldn't see. What exactly did she go through? What happened between her and Yu Yuan? I can't see through him. Yu Yuan is at the spirit nurture realm, and he spends most of his time in the remote dark moon city of the Silver Moon Empire. What kind of entanglement could there be between the two of them? Chen Qinyan was full of doubts. As for Yu Yuan, who had opened his mouth, he was silent for a long time. What surprised everyone was that the two beams of bloody light that had been constantly killing the cultivators in the valley quietly disappeared into a hole in the ground, and didn't reappear. Those who had been brutally killed had their qi and blood sucked dry, and were as shriveled as corpses exposed to the sun. The remaining cultivators were like birds startled by the twang of a bow, panting in exhaustion. Then, even more people noticed Yu Yuan's abnormality, and quietly looked over. Long Tianxiao had originally been outside the valley. Now, not only was he looking at Yu Yuan, but he also hesitated for a moment before walking over to Yu Yuan. He knew that there was a tacit understanding between Yu Yuan and Anzan Shan. He knew that Anzan Shan wouldn't make a move on Yu Yuan. After Chen Qinyan appeared with Yu Yuan, he figured out something. It was safest to follow Yu Yuan. Yu Yuan opened his mouth again. It wasn't just Chen Qinyan. Even Mei Qiurong, Long Tianxiao, Guan Xianyun, and possibly even Anzan Shan, who was hiding underground, were listening. The one he cared about the most was naturally her. She is the one I care about the most. I should have come earlier, but I was delayed because of some irresistible reason. Ignoring everyone else, Yu Yuan looked at her and said, "I've been delayed for too long. When I finally had the time and opportunity, I came as soon as possible. But I was still too late." With an apologetic look on her face, Yu Yuan sighed softly, her heart filled with guilt. What? Practically all the people listening didn't understand what he meant. They didn't know what was going on. Yu Yuan knew that she should be able to understand what he was saying. Then he saw a shocking light explode from the depths of her emerald eyes. In that instant it was like she had been reborn. Her previous panic, unease, fear, resentment, and other emotions were all washed away by Yu Yuan's words. The dark clouds and haze that covered her body seemed to have been swept clean under the scorching sun and blown away by the strong wind. Chen Qinyan could even see a faint smile appear in her emerald eyes. That smile gave her a feeling of incomparable sweetness and innocence. Strange, truly strange. It's clearly an evil creature covered in poison. It's clearly killed so many people. It's clearly an inhuman fellow, muttered Chen Qinyan. She found it inconceivable. Zlotsla! A blazing beam of light suddenly burst out of Lu Ziha's chest. It was as powerful as a rainbow, and as fast as a flaming meteor. Unparalleled sharpness tore through the sky. The blazing beam of light, with a speed and violence that caught everyone off guard, directly hit the dark-skinned little girl's chest. The shell covering the little girl's chest instantly exploded. The moment the shell exploded, she, who had fallen out of the miasma and transformed into a human, was blasted into the hard rock wall behind her by the strong beam of light. The white, translucent bones on her back gave off a series of crisp, cracking sounds. The change was so sudden that no one could react in time. When everyone came to their senses, they saw that she had been stabbed in the chest by a bright red short spear, nailing her to the rock wall. She lowered her head and looked at the short spear. She reached out with her small hand, as if she wanted to grab the short spear and pull it out. Bright red light suddenly burst out of the short spear in her chest. In an instant, her chest became a bloody mess. Her hand that was grabbing the short spear suddenly lost its strength and fell limply to the ground. Yu Yuan, who had just said those words, felt his mind go blank and his mind go blank. He stared blankly at Lu Ziha, who had collapsed to the ground as if dead due to the dragon whisker poisonous heart pill, and then slowly stood up. Then, he looked at her, who had been stabbed in the chest and nailed to the rock wall by a bright red short spear. He almost went crazy in an instant. How could this be? How could this be? Enormous grief suddenly surged into his heart. In this life, when the three souls had awakened, there had never been a moment as painful and unbearable as this moment. She, who had just gotten rid of a bit of pain and 300 years of depression, who had just felt a bit of joy from his explanation, suffered such a heavy blow. The short spear that had been pierced through her chest, and she was unable to pull it out, was still destroying her body. No matter how fierce she was, no matter how tenacious her life force was, she would probably be in so much pain that she wished she was dead after being targeted by such a sneak attack. Yu Yuan even felt that she didn't even have the strength to struggle or immediately counterattack. How serious of an injury was this? How much pain was she enduring? You were the one who brought him in. Yu Yuan's eyes seemed to be dyed red in an instant. He glared at Chen Qinyan. Do you really think that with the dragon whisker poisonous heart pill in his body, he could successfully pass through the ghost fire poison stream formation? Isn't it all because of me? Because you and I are old friends, I signaled her to let you in so that you could come in with Lu Ziha. Yes, it was me. It was because of my request that she let you in. Yu Yuan's words had already become incoherent towards the end. He glared at Chen Qinyan's eyes, causing Chen Qinyan to feel great fear and unease. She hurriedly explained, Yu Yuan, I don't know what's going on. That Lu Ziha, after taking the dragon whisker poisonous heart pill, didn't have any special symptoms. I really don't know what's going on. Heh. Suddenly, Lu Ziha, who had slowly stood up, let out a hearty laugh. The loud laugh was like the ringing of a large bell, causing everyone's eardrums to rumble. That laughter clearly didn't belong to Lu Ziha. It sounded like it belonged to a middle-aged man who was brimming with qi and blood. At this moment, the gazes of everyone in the valley suddenly turned towards him. Yu Yuan, who had almost gone crazy, finally recovered a bit of his rationality because of that ear-splitting laughter. He also looked towards Lu Ziha. The emaciated and shriveled Lu Ziha had ash-brown dragon whiskers floating around his body. His cheekbones were deeply sunken, making him look like a human skin draped over a skeleton. But his qi and blood, which should have been exhausted, suddenly became abundant and boundless when he stood up once more. It was as if there was a secret passage that had come from some unknown place that was forcibly pouring in new fleshly essence chi into his middle dantian. His emaciated body seemed to be inflated with air, rapidly becoming plump and strong. After a few loud laughs, not only did he return to his original state, but because of the influx of chi and blood, he even became taller and sturdier than before. It was as if he had become another person. Someone has always been in his body. Long Tianxiao looked for a while before suddenly coming to a realization. It can't be? It can't possibly be Anzan Shan, right? Anzan Shan had once used the blood god's secret arts to use a similar technique. As for Anzan Shan, he had been hiding underground the entire time. Just now, he had released 2 rays of blood-colored light that had been destroying the cultivators in the mountain valley. When Yu Yuan had been talking to her, he had been abnormally quiet. Could it be that Anzan Shan had been waiting for her to relax because of Yu Yuan's words? Long Tianxiao and Guan Xianyun had all noticed that when Yu Yuan had said those words, the emaciated girl's emotions had undergone a heaven-shaking change. That was why she had revealed such a large opening in such a short time, allowing Long Tianxiao to find an opportunity to deal a fatal blow to her. Yu Yuan's words had destroyed the girl's defensive line that she had always been on guard against. Because she had lost control of her mind, she hadn't been on guard in time. Of course it's not Anzan Shan. Mei Qiurong's lips curled into a smile. She let out a sigh of relief, as if victory was already in her grasp. According to our agreement, I will seal Anzan Shan and bring him back to Xuantianzong. As for her, you can deal with her as you wish. Mei Qiurong's words were directed at Lu Zaihe. Chen Qinyan was stunned. She looked from Mei Qiurong to Lu Zaihe. Little girl Chen, this has nothing to do with you. Mei Qiurong smiled. Don't worry. No matter what, we won't harm you. The Xuantianzong, Primal Yang sect, and Sword sect have been the leaders of the Tianyuan continent for thousands of years. Our agreement is as firm as a mountain. Little girl Chen, many thanks for bringing me in. Lu Zaihe's smile was gentle. He looked at Mei Qiurong with the gaze of an elder looking at a junior. He said very lovingly, otherwise it would have been very troublesome for me to break the outer poison formation. At the very least, my identity would have been exposed, and I wouldn't have been able to kill that strange creature in one blow. Therefore, your sword sect also has some indispensable contributions in this grand mission. He stroked his beard and laughed. Then, his expression became slightly strange as he looked at the non-existent beard on his chin. He said awkwardly, I'm old. I've forgotten that this body isn't mine. This little guy who's still wet behind the ears doesn't have a beard at all. Mei Qiurong and him chatted as if there was no one else around. Apart from Chen Qinyan, everyone in the chilling wind valley was ignored. Sir, where are you from, and who are you? Yu Yuan took a deep breath and forced himself to calm down. He stared at Lu Zaihe and asked word by word. He knew that the Lu Zaihe in front of him wasn't the real Lu Zaihe. The laughing Lu Zaihe was holding a grayish-brown dragon's whisker in one hand. He squeezed it hard, and the dragon's whisker turned to dust. Lu Zaihe looked at Yu Yuan, who was clearly suppressing his anger with great interest. He said with a face full of smiles, "Why don't you take a guess?" Chapter 241. A dark shadow quietly appeared between Lu Zaihe's eyebrows. The shadow twisted and condensed, transforming into another Lu Zaihe. The Lu Zaihe between his eyebrows suddenly became rational and looked at Chen Qinyan from afar. He was very eager to explain and say something. Chen Qinyan glanced at him and knew that the Lu Zaihe between his eyebrows was the true manifestation of his 3 souls. That's all you're worth. Lu Zaihe stretched out his left index finger, smiled brightly, and pressed it between his eyebrows. His left index finger was nothing in the eyes of others, but in Chen Qingyan's perception, in the eyes of Lu Zihe's shadow between his eyebrows, it was clearly a fiery mountain millions of feet high. That mountain of flames wasn't naturally formed by stones, but by piles of countless crimson crystals. This mountain was majestic and grand, surrounded by burning fiery clouds. It was as if one's soul would be ignited just by looking at it. Billions of crimson lightning bolts intertwined and wrapped around the fiery mountain. There were also 3 huge blazing suns. It was unknown whether they were real or just projections, but they were all floating high above the peak of the fiery mountain, shining their blazing divine light onto the fiery mountain. When he pressed his hand, the scene was magical and the world changed. Lu Zihe's shadow between his eyebrows originally wanted to explain to Chen Qingyan, but when it found that his finger had revealed such a strange scene, it closed its eyes in despair. His finger covered the shadow between his eyebrows. Qi. Lu Zihe's true soul, the condensed shadow of the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and human, was penetrated by the supreme yang power and immediately burned. After 10 breaths, all traces of its existence were burned away. This is much more comfortable. Lu Zihe withdrew his finger and laughed heartily. His face was flushed. With his hands behind his back, he said to Chen Qingyan like an old man, "Chen girl, Xuantianzong punishes traitors, and I'm here to punish evil. You came to the Beefing Mountain Range, just to travel. According to your master, you should learn more about medicine. There is no conflict of interest between us. Your master is famous for being protective. I won't provoke you. Everything in the valley, except for Xuantianzong's traitors and that dark-skinned girl, you can choose whatever you want." His tone was arrogant and casual. At this point, Chen Qingyan had also calmed down and asked, "Senior, may I know which mountain in the primal yang sect you're from?" How could Chen Qingyan not know that the person hiding in Lu Zihe was from the primal yang sect of the Tianyuan continent, the primal yang sect that was as famous as the Sword sect and Xuantianzong? Not only was she able to tell that he was a cultivator from the primal yang sect, but she also knew that he was in the Soul Wander realm. Perhaps Lu Zihe hadn't even noticed that his Yin spirit had traveled far and wide, and had placed itself in Lu Zihe's body using the primal yang sect's secret technique. He even felt that it was not only because of his abundant qi and blood, but also because he had made some progress in his cultivation recently. He was afraid that he would be able to quickly break through. The Yin spirit of an expert would use a secret technique to slip into Lu Zihe's body and create such an illusion. Before the Yin spirit appeared, Lu Zihe would still have a strong sense of confidence. But what he didn't know was that the Yin soul of a powerful expert could silently guide him and alter his judgment and actions. It made him make some decisions that went against his will. He even thought that it was his subconscious, his intuition. In fact, it was the Yin soul that had secretly influenced him. It probably wasn't Lu Zihe's intention to lure the Hu clan to Ill Wind Valley and cause their guest elders to die one by one. Even Lu Zihe himself felt dizzy and didn't understand what was going on. In the end, Lu Zihe's true soul shadow appeared between his eyebrows. He should have suddenly realized that he wasn't the one who had killed the Hu clan members. Instead, it was the Yin soul of the primal yang sect that had slipped into his body. Unfortunately, it was already too late to argue. Lu Zihe was dead. The primal yang sect. I can't believe that the primal yang sect of the Tianyuan continent's 3 great sects actually sent people to the Jade Peak Mountain Range. The Jade Peak Mountain Range borders the Scarlet Sun Empire, and it's said that the Scarlet Sun Empire's greatest backer is the primal yang sect. Xuantianzong's Mei Qiurong, the Sword sect's Chen Qingyan, and another primal yang sect expert. What secrets are hidden in the Jade Peak Mountain Range and Ill Wind Valley? Those who were still alive felt their hearts sink to the bottom as they wailed. The primal yang sect. Yu Yuan roared inwardly as he looked at the calm and collected Lu Zihe. A short, dark-skinned woman had her chest pierced through by a crimson short spear. She was still hanging high above the stone wall, twitching from time to time, but couldn't break free from the short spear. Her head was bowed, and her hands dangled weakly. Clearly, she had suffered heavy injuries. The crimson short spear continued to spew out power, still destroying her flesh and body, causing her to sustain injuries. The purpose of this was to worsen her injuries, so that she wouldn't be able to quickly heal herself and escape with her amazing recovery ability. As fierce as she was, as long as she wasn't continuously attacked, with her terrifying talent, she would be able to recover quickly. If she hadn't lost control of her mind and been ambushed at the moment when her willpower was weak, she wouldn't have been injured so easily. My name is Wu Ziding, and I'm from Mount Eastern Sunday. Faced with Chen Qingyan's question, the Lu Zaihe, who had grown taller and taller due to his rich flesh aura, no longer tried to hide his identity. He smiled and said, Mount Eastern Sun isn't very famous among the 7 mountain peaks of the Primal Yang sect. You've only been in the Tianyuan continent for a short time, so your master probably didn't tell you much about Mount Eastern Sunday. You might not have heard of me. Chen Qingyan nodded. So you're Senior Wu from Mount Eastern Sunday. The Primal Yang sect of the Tianyuan continent was composed of 7 mountain peaks. Mount Eastern Sun was the head of the 7. The Primal Yang sect was named after the Primal Yang sect. Aside from Mount Eastern Sun, there were also Mount Eastern Sun, Mount Eastern Sun, Mount Eastern Sun, Mount Eastern Sun, and Mount Eastern Sunday. These 7 mountain peaks represented the full strength and reserve power of the Primal Yang sect. The cultivation methods and legacies of the 7 mountain peaks were different, each with their own wonders and uniqueness. However, the other 6 mountain peaks were all led by Mount Eastern Sunday. Every time the sect master of the 7 mountain peaks was replaced, there would be fierce competition. The mountain peak master who won in the end would enter the Primal Yang sect and become the new sect master. Mount Eastern Sun wasn't particularly famous among the 7 mountain peaks of the Primal Yang sect, especially in recent years. That was why Chen Qingyan's master rarely mentioned Mount Eastern Sun when talking about the Primal Yang sect. Wu Ziding said that she wasn't familiar with Mount Eastern Sun and had never heard of it. However, even though Mount Eastern Sun wasn't one of the strongest among the 7 mountain peaks of the Primal Yang sect, it was still a prominent existence in the Tianyuan continent. The cultivators of Mount Eastern Sun were a level above the 7 great sects of the Tianyuan continent. On the Qianxian continent, Wu Ziding, who came from Mount Eastern Sun of the Primal Yang sect, was even more extraordinary. Save the pleasantries. Wu Ziding laughed heartily. It's fate that brought us together. Girl Chen, you can just watch from the side. We'll take care of these chores in the valley first. After that, if you want anything, just let us know. Given your master's face, we will definitely give it to you. Mei Qirong also smiled and said, Yeah, Girl Chen, you can just watch from the sidelines. In their eyes, now that the 2 of them had joined hands and the skinny, dark-skinned girl was under their control, the matter in the valley would soon be settled. Chen Qingyan frowned and fell silent. Kid. Wu Ziding grinned and once again fixed his gaze on Yu Yuan, who was still in the valley, and said, I noticed something strange about you when I was in Lu Zaihe's body. How did you get to know that girl? Our Primal Yang sect only learned about her by chance. That's because one of our Primal Yang sect disciples was attacked by her when they came to the Jade Peak mountain range in search of medicinal plants. Back then, she was restricted by the restrictive spell at the bottom of the swamp, so she didn't show any special abilities. Many years later, another disciple of our Primal Yang sect came to the Jade Peak mountain range again, and suddenly discovered that she was growing at an astonishing speed. She even showed signs of breaking free of the restrictive spell and gaining wisdom. That person finally paid attention and told me about it. I wasn't in a hurry, so I let him continue to observe her. After a few more years, I discovered that her spiritual awareness was astonishing, and her toxins were even more terrifying. With these words, he stopped and looked at Yu Yuan with a smile, his eyes narrowed. In order to get her out and take her away, I waited for many years. What about you? How old are you? When did you come to the Jade Peak mountain range? How do you know her? Wu Ziding was full of curiosity. He had been observing Lu Zihe from the moment Jin Fan had drawn out the toxic miasma from Lu Zihe's body. With Lu Zihe's keen eyes, he could see many things in the bottom of his heart, which made him even more confused. The matter of reincarnation and recultivation, even in the vast world, was extremely hidden and difficult to find traces of. Therefore, he did not think of this point. However, there wasn't another spirit inside of Yu Yuan that didn't match his flesh aura, soul, and sea of awareness. Therefore, Yu Yuan wasn't trapped by a powerful nether soul like he was. All of these made him puzzled, and he wanted to find out the truth. Senior Wu, he's my friend, said Qin Qinyan suddenly. Friend? Wu Ziding laughed involuntarily. I've been here since he appeared. The two of you have only just met. Where did such a deep friendship come from? Furthermore, with his background and family, how could he be worthy of being your friend? All right, Qin Qinyan, I'm just curious about this kid. I'll leave him alive for you. Why don't we clean up the others first? Suggested Mei Qiurong. Wu Ziding glanced at the cave where Yu Yuan was standing. He knew that Anzan Shan was hiding underground. After a moment of thought, he nodded and said, The Heavenly Medicine Sect and the Medicine God Sect have a deep relationship. Someone from the Medicine God Sect should be coming to Evil Wind Valley. Neither my Primal Yang Sect nor your Zuantianzong wants to offend the Medicine God Sect. Therefore, we should try our best not to let the Medicine God Sect know what we're doing. As soon as he said this, Long Tianshao and Guan Xianyun's expressions changed. The Guifu School's Guan Xianyun took a deep breath. Suddenly, he was no longer afraid of the underworld flame poison stream formation. He took out 3 talismans and stuck them on his forehead, chest, and lower dantian before rushing into the valley. The 3 talismans corresponded to his upper dantian, middle dantian, and lower dantian. He was going to use the talismans to protect his vitals. Even if his body would be corroded by the poison, he had to escape from Evil Wind Valley. Afterwards, he would think of a way to expel the poison from his body. Clearly, Wu Ziding and Mei Qiurong's decision told him what they were going to do. Old Brother Guan, please stop. Chapter 242. With a smile on his face, Wu Ziding summoned Guan Xianyun from the Guifu School. He was holding a palm-sized bronze mirror in his hand. The bronze mirror was simple and unadorned, giving people a feeling that it had seen the vicissitudes of life. The surface of the bronze mirror wasn't very clear, and the people it reflected were all blurry. However, as soon as the palm-sized bronze mirror shone on Guan Xianyun, the figure of this Peak-een soul expert from the Guifu School suddenly froze in midair. Wu Ziding smiled playfully and said, Why are you in such a hurry, Brother Guan? The 3 talismans that Guan Xianyun had stuck to his forehead, chest, and lower dantian began to burn. Crimson, golden, and purple flames surged out of his upper dantian, middle dantian, and lower dantian, respectively. Soul awareness, flesh aura, and spiritual power, the 3 types of power of a cultivator, suddenly burst forth. Guan Xianyun's figure froze in midair as he awkwardly turned around. Facing the burning flames, he smiled bitterly at Wu Ziding and said with difficulty, A heaven-grade spiritual tool, the primordial flame mirror. Wu Ziding's eyes lit up as he nodded and said, You have good eyes, brother. I can't believe you recognize a spiritual tool from Mount Dongyang. You're right. The primordial flame mirror was given to me by the sect master of Mount Dongyang when I was lucky enough to break through to the soul wander stage. The primordial flame mirror is only a heaven-grade spiritual tool. I've failed the sectmaster's generosity. After so long, I still haven't been able to upgrade it," he said to Guan Xianyun with a regretful expression. The palm-sized primordial flame mirror quietly reflected Guan Xianyun's blurry figure. Guan Xianyun was determined to escape from Ill Wind Valley. The moment his figure appeared in the primordial flame mirror, his Een soul in his sea of awareness sensed that something was wrong. It was as if his Een soul had suddenly been exposed to a blazing sun, burning hot. Before he could realize what was going on, he discovered that the 3 talismans had already been burned to ashes. At that moment, he hadn't been able to charge into the Netherflame Poison Stream formation, so he hadn't been able to escape from Ill Wind Valley. The 3 talismans that were worth tens of thousands of gold coins had been wasted for no reason. No one knew how precious those 3 talismans were. In order to obtain the 3 talismans that didn't belong to the Guifu school, he had spent several years in the northern part of the Tranquil Continent. It was said that he had studied the talismans in the tomb of a Grand Talisman Master for many years. Only when the opportunity came, did he steal the 3 talismans at lightning speed. After spending a long time comprehending the mysteries of the talismans, he branded them with his blood essence and soul imprint. Finally, he was able to use the 3 talismans. As a result, his attainments in the art of runes improved rapidly, and his cultivation level reached the peak of the late stage of the Een Spirit realm. Just a little more and he would be able to reach the soul-traversing realm. But now, when Wu Ziding summoned the primordial flame mirror, the 3 talismans that could have helped him escape from the chilly Wind Valley had been burned to ashes. Master Plum, from the beginning to the end, we have been standing on your side. The other 2 elders from the Thunder Firmament Divine Hall and a few other cultivators from the Qian continent seemed to have a nervous breakdown after Wu Ziding made a move on Guan Xianyun. They all suddenly realized that Wu Ziding from the Primal Yang sect and Mei Churong from the Xuantianzong sect were about to start a massacre. Expressionless, Mei Churong looked at the 2 elders of the Thunder Firmament Divine Hall and the others in silence. Wu Ziding laughed loudly and said, "There are some things that I can't let others know about in Ill Wind Valley, so I can only apologize." He flicked his sleeve. The primordial flame mirror, which was the size of a palm, flew into the sky and gradually spread out like a large mirror hanging in the sky. Everyone in the valley looked up, and discovered that their own figures were reflected in the mirror in the sky. In a split second everything seemed to have changed, and the world seemed to have spun. By the time they realized what was happening, many of them discovered, to their horror, that their 3 souls seemed to have been separated from their fleshly bodies and fallen into the primordial flame mirror in the sky. As for the world within the primordial flame mirror, it was a completely different space. That space was formed from blazing flames. Volcanoes were erupting everywhere, and a rain of fire was falling from the sky. Countless unknown flame divine runes danced in the air, as if they had a mind of their own. The cultivators from the various countries of the Qian continent who had inexplicably entered that space were all howling in grief. In the entire Ill Wind Valley, the only ones who weren't affected by the primordial flame mirror were Long Tianshao, Guan Xianyun, Chen Qinyan, and Yu Yuan. Long Tianshao, with his human head and dragon body, was hiding in a corner. It was unknown what secret art he was using, but a golden light surrounded his body as he bitterly resisted. Guan Xianyun was using a secret art from the Guifu school. A dark ring of light appeared behind his head. The ghost talismans and ghosts within the ring of light were annihilated. He was borrowing the ghost talismans and the ghosts within them to block the primordial flame mirror's soul reversal. Chen Qinyan was holding his snakeskin scabbard. It was like he had a protective talisman in his hand. He wasn't affected by the primordial flame mirror's pull at all. As for Yu Yuan within the primordial flame mirror, Yu Yuan was using its heaven-defying ability to change heaven, earth, reflecting his three souls. All he did was form a connection with the distant soul transformation pool and the four ancient black characters at the bottom of the pool. Once the connection was complete, the three souls sat firmly in his sea of consciousness, not moving in the slightest. "Oh, this little fellow is a bit strange." Wu Ziding, who was controlling the primordial flame mirror with his soul, looked at Yu Yuan in surprise. He rubbed his chin, looking at his non-existent beard. Even my Xiantian abyss vortex couldn't separate his three souls. "Your primordial flame mirror naturally can't," said Mei Qirong. Hearing this, Wu Ziding was even more surprised. "Senior Wu, you promised me," cried Chen Qinyan. Wu Ziding, who had been planning on putting more pressure on Yu Yuan, frowned slightly. He nodded and said, "Fine, I'll come back later to ask that little fellow." With these words, he focused all of his attention on the primordial flame mirror. Within the primordial flame mirror, the weakest souls that had manifested were already exploding and dissipating like dazzling fireworks. At this moment, Yu Yuan, who had been standing at the entrance to the underground cave, suddenly walked towards the dark-skinned girl, who was nailed to the rock wall by the short spear, without saying a word. Every step he took was firm and heavy, and his expression was strangely calm. Mei Qirong frowned slightly. Her figure flashed and appeared where he had been. She first looked at Yu Yuan, then lowered her head and looked towards the cave entrance. Wu Ziding didn't forget to look at Yu Yuan when he was about to kill. When he saw Yu Yuan walking towards the dark-skinned girl, he didn't stop him. Instead, a mocking smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. That smile seemed to be saying, "With your cultivation base, what can you do even if you go there?" Who knew better than him how powerful and miraculous the short spear was? Not to mention Yu Yuan from Dark Moon City, even Chen Qinyan from the Sword Sect wouldn't be able to help the skinny, dark-skinned girl, whom he had set his eyes on, escape even if he climbed up the stone wall. Because of this confidence, not only did he bide his time, but he also looked like he was waiting to see a joke. "I'll leave the top to you. I'll go underground." Mei Qirong left these words. Holding the Heavenly Palace seal in one hand and the yellow gourd in the other, she suddenly floated down to the underground cave. After a flash, she disappeared. The battle was still going on in the valley. Chen Qinyan took a deep breath. Looking at Yu Yuan with a complicated expression, he was also hesitating and struggling in his heart. Wu Ziding, who was at least in the soul-traversing realm, had the primordial flame mirror and the short spear. Plus Mei Qirong, who had dropped her cultivation base, had the Heavenly Palace seal in her hand. They should have other magical items that could restrict Anzan Shan. They were both from the three high sects, and he was also a senior whose cultivation base was far higher than hers. If they really fell out with each other, she wouldn't die because of her master's deterrence. But in that case, it was unlikely that Wu Ziding and Mei Qirong would let Yu Yuan go because of her, right? In the end, Chen Qinyan chose to bide her time. She just stared at Yu Yuan without blinking, wondering what Yu Yuan was going to do. Could he save her? Her back was against the rock wall. Her seven-colored bones were no longer shining. Her hands drooped and the shell in her chest exploded. She seemed to sense Yu Yuan's approach. Her shoulders suddenly trembled slightly. With great difficulty, she lifted her lowered head with all her might. Fizz! Wisps of crimson flame suddenly burst out of the short spear, as if to teach her a lesson, as if to tame her. In an instant, blood splashed out of her chest. Pieces of broken shell exploded and fell off. Each piece of shell was condensed from the essence of her blood and carried her soul imprint. They were all very precious. Even if they shattered, they would have a chance to be recombined and reforged again. However, after they exploded, they would be completely destroyed. It would be difficult to reforge them again. They could only grow back in the years to come in an even more difficult way. However, even as pieces of shell exploded and fell off, she didn't hesitate. Enduring the extreme pain, she raised her head with all her might. Halfway through raising her head, more than half of the shell in her chest exploded and fell off. Feeling the loss of her flesh aura and soul essence, she was somewhat lost and confused. However, when Yu Yuan's figure finally appeared in her emerald eyes, they suddenly blossomed with a trace of a different kind of spirit. That trace of spirit was like a divine lightning bolt in a dark room, instantly illuminating her originally dim eyes. And her heart. Just like that, she looked at Yu Yuan in a daze. Her eyes suddenly changed unpredictably, giving birth to countless complicated emotions. It was as if there were thousands of words coming out of her eyes. Joy, and satisfaction completely replaced resentment, and grievance. In the end, there was only one emotion in her eyes. She wanted Yu Yuan to live well. Don't worry about her. In front of the rock wall, Yu Yuan looked up at her and took a deep breath. Wu Ziding of Mount Dongyang. She didn't say anything, but these 6 words screamed in Yu Yuan's heart. He had never thought that the backup he had prepared for his reincarnation after 300 years of evolution would actually become such a high-level intelligent creature. From the moment she came out of the miasma and turned into the short girl with the black hand, a special feeling that he had never felt before grew in Yu Yuan's heart. I don't need you to protect me anymore. I'm 300 years late. It's my turn to protect you. There were many caves on the rock wall, but only one of them didn't have poisonous smoke flowing out. That cave had once been filled with Yin-Chi astral wind. Suddenly, the Yin-Chi astral wind, which had stopped because she was severely injured and nailed to the rock wall, roared out again. It didn't go towards Wu Ziding or Mei Qiurong, but towards Yu Yuan. Chapter 243. The Yin-Chi astral wind, which had stopped for a long time, howled out of the cave once more. The Yin-Chi astral wind was invisible, but a soul-traversing realm expert like Wu Ziding could sense it immediately and observe it clearly with his Yin soul. Yin-Chi astral wind. Controlling the primordial flame mirror, he shouted at the cultivators of Qian continent who were slaughtering in the valley. He was at the middle soul wander realm. With the primordial flame mirror and the short spear in his hand, he relied on his profound cultivation base, artifacts, and profound spirit arts to be the strongest in the valley. After that skinny, dark-skinned girl was severely injured and nailed to the wall, he no longer put anyone in his eyes. Long Tianshao, Guan Xianyun, and the others were no match for him. However, the sudden gust of Yin-Chi astral wind caused him to let out a soft cry and his expression to change slightly. That was because the Yin-Chi astral wind was also terrifying to soul wander realm cultivators like him. Only young spirits could be fearless of the Yin-Chi astral wind. And he had not reached the yang spirit realm. He had always believed that the Yin-Chi astral wind could only be controlled by that skinny, dark-skinned girl. This was also the reason why he had first attacked that skinny, dark-skinned girl after secretly communicating with Mei Qiurong. No one knew that he, like Mei Qiurong, was deeply afraid of the Yin-Chi astral wind. He had never expected that the Yin-Chi astral wind could still move when the dark-skinned girl's chest was pierced by the short spear and she was bleeding profusely and her shell was shattered. Yu Yuan. Wu Ziding noticed that the Yin-Chi astral wind was not flowing toward him, but toward Yu Yuan. His expression darkened. The Yin-Chi astral wind could destroy the soul and sea of consciousness, turn the upper Dantian's Niwen acupoints into ashes, and destroy the 3 souls of heaven, earth, and man. But Wu Ziding also knew that only cultivators who had reached the subtle realm with their upper dantian open would be able to break through the Yin-Chi astral wind's defense. An unopened Niwen was a natural barrier that prevented the Yin-Chi astral wind from entering. From this, it could be seen that even if Yu Yuan, who was at the spirit nurture realm, was swallowed by the Yin-Chi astral wind, he should be fine. Then, why was the Yin-Chi astral wind moving? Why was it blowing toward him? Wu Ziding couldn't figure it out immediately. However, he instinctively felt uneasy, as he had a feeling that the sudden gust of wind that was blowing towards Yu Yuan would bring him great danger. He didn't want any danger to appear. He wanted to nip it in the bud. Thus, he made his move in advance. Due to the blowing of the Inchi astral winds, he didn't use any incantations or techniques that involved his soul remembrance or spirit sense. He simply flicked his finger at Yu Yuan. At the tip of his finger, a speck of light the size of a grain of rice shone brightly. The tiny speck of light was like a miniature sun that had shrunk billions of times. It actually emitted a dazzling light that made people not dare to look directly at it. Light of the rising sun! Qin Qinyan suddenly screamed, her beautiful eyes filled with anger as she shouted, "Senior Wu, you promised me. I'm really sorry. This brat is a bit strange. I'll peel off a layer of his skin first." Wu Ziding was a little embarrassed. He smiled at her and said, "Don't worry, I'll be careful. I said I'll spare his life, so I'll spare his life." The speck of light that was the size of a grain of rice flew towards Yu Yuan. Standing in front of the thin, dark-skinned girl, Yu Yuan, who was feeling the surging Yin Qi astral winds, suddenly turned around. In his eyes, the tiny speck of light that was flying towards him was like a blazing sun that released terrifying light and heat. The vast amount of flame power and flesh aura condensed into the tiny speck of light was enough to burn a profound breaking realm cultivator to ashes. Light of the rising sun. Yu Yuan took a deep breath as his expression suddenly changed. Of course he knew that light of the rising sun was the primal yang sect's overbearing spiritual incantation. Many primal yang sect cultivators would gather the divine light of the sun and absorb it into themselves. After washing and refining it, they would mix it with the flesh aura in their middle dantian. The blazing flame power of the sun could benefit a cultivator's body and make their flesh aura rich with flame power. With the help of the primal yang sect's secret incantations, the primal yang sect would refine the flame power, flesh aura, and condense it into a tiny speck of light, which was light of the rising sun. Light of the rising sun was wrapped in flesh aura and spiritual power, and contained the blazing essence of the sun. It was extremely famous in the Tianyuan continent. Wu Ziding condensed a speck of light of the rising sun. With his flesh aura and spiritual power as a soul wander realm cultivator, the terrifying flame power it could unleash could easily kill him. Seeing a blazing sun flying towards them with heaven-destroying, earth-extinguishing momentum, veins bulged on Yu Yuan's forehead. "Senior Wu." "What?" Chen Qinyan saw that the situation was bad and screamed again. "If this attack hits him, he won't be able to survive." The light of the rising sun didn't fly very fast, but it continued to accumulate power. The flesh aura, spiritual power, and sun power it contained made her heart tremble slightly. She suddenly realized that Wu Ziding wasn't trying to teach Yu Yuan a lesson, but to kill Yu Yuan. Wu Ziding, who was frightened by the Inchi astral winds, didn't want to ask or know anything. He only wanted Yu Yuan to die quickly. "I'm sorry, girl Chen. I haven't met such a low-realm junior in a long time, so I didn't control my strength well." Wu Ziding grinned and laughed dryly, saying, "You've only known him for a few days, so you probably don't have a deep relationship. Your master shouldn't come and denounce me because of such a lowly brat, right?" He had only killed Yu Yuan, not Chen Qinyan. Why would that person from the sword sect care about this? The reason Wu Ziding had concealed his killing intent and revealed it along the way was so that Chen Qinyan wouldn't be able to help. She wouldn't be able to help in time. He dared to do this because Wu Ziding, who was residing in Lu Ziha's body, knew that she and Yu Yuan had only just met and didn't have a deep connection. He also knew Yu Yuan's background. He was a little guy from the Silver Moon Empire's Dark Moon City. In Evil Wind Valley, he dared to kill cultivators from all over the Qianxian continent. Why would he care about an ant like Yu Yuan? In fact, other than Mei Churong of the Xuantianzong sect and Chen Qinyan of the Sword sect, he didn't take anyone seriously. Only the cultivators of the other two great sects, who were equally famous as the primal Yang sect, were at the same level and could be mentioned in the same breath. No one else was worthy. Zlotsla. The moment he finished speaking, the tiny speck of light that was condensed from the essence of the rising sun slammed into Yu Yuan's chest. In an instant, Yu Yuan was engulfed by the weird orange flames. As if he had been hit by a carriage that weighed tons, his back slammed into the stone wall below the skinny, dark-skinned girl with a loud boom. The sturdy stone wall cracked and shattered continuously with a series of cracking sounds. Yu Yuan's face was flushed, and blood kept flowing out of the corner of his mouth, as if he had been embedded into the stone wall. The rice grain light in his chest was still releasing blazing flame power and violent spiritual energy to destroy his flesh and blood. Huff! Fizz! Yu Yuan, who had been blasted into the stone wall by the rising sun essence, had all kinds of strange spiritual energy and flesh aura clashing fiercely in his chest. His chest was a bloody mess, with wounds so deep that bones could be seen. The rice grain light continued to release light and heat from the wounds in his chest. The orange flames that engulfed Yu Yuan weren't real flames, but rather a combination of flesh aura and spiritual energy. Since cultivators had different flesh auras and spiritual incantations, the color of the rising sun essence would be different. The orange flames that had been ignited all over Yu Yuan were destroying his flesh and blood. A sparkling, translucent light suddenly shone from the bones in Yu Yuan's chest after his chest had been split open. Even though Yu Yuan had suffered such a heavy blow, not a single bone in his chest had been broken. What was most surprising was that his exposed bones were as hard and cold as crystals, as if they were made of some kind of mysterious metal. It was very strange. Panting violently, Yu Yuan lowered his head and looked at his broken flesh and exposed bones. A strange look appeared in his eyes. He actually didn't die. The rising sun essence wasn't known for its sharpness, so it couldn't penetrate a powerful expert's body with one strike. The most terrifying thing about this incantation of the primal Yang sect was its subsequent burning. It burned the opponent's blood, flesh, and internal organs until they were dried up and charred black. After being reborn in the soul-transforming pool and practicing the evil demon body-tempering art, the toughness of his fleshly body had almost surpassed that of all spirit-nurturing stage cultivators at the same level. Even if it was a cultivator at the Golden Hall realm or Shattering Profound realm, he was still able to challenge them. That was why he hadn't been killed by the rising sun essence in one strike. He was still alive. Sensing the orange flames that were spreading throughout his body and seeping into his body, Yu Yuan grimaced and howled in pain, but his eyes didn't panic. The evil demon body-tempering art? Wu Ziding rubbed his chin and looked at Yu Yuan, who was slowly being eroded by the orange flames. He was slightly surprised and said, "I didn't expect that the fiend demon sect, which had been destroyed, would have such a powerful body-tempering art." The sunrise brilliance wasn't known for being swift and fierce, but Yu Yuan was only at the spirit creation realm after all. Even if he'd intentionally suppressed it in the beginning for the sake of concealing it from Chen Qinyan, this strike of his was sufficient to directly kill an ordinary Golden Hall realm cultivator. The fact that Yu Yuan didn't die instantly was obviously out of his expectations, but he wasn't nervous or uneasy at all. This was because he firmly believed that the burning power of the rising sun essence would turn Yu Yuan into a pile of charred bones in a short time. There was no chance of him surviving. Ya. Above Yu Yuan's head, the skinny little girl, who was nailed to the rock wall by a short spear, looked down at him, who had been severely injured by the rising sun essence, and was almost buried in the rock wall, and called out awkwardly. Her eyes could reveal all of her thoughts and intentions, but Yu Yuan didn't look at her at this moment. Therefore, she could only call out to Yu Yuan in a way that she wasn't familiar with and didn't know how to do. Yu Yuan heard her and looked up blankly. Their eyes met. Yu Yuan saw worry and anxiety in her eyes. He saw that she wanted him to leave. It was as if she was saying, "You're too weak right now. Don't worry about me. Go away, go far away, rip." Scarlet flames exploded from the short spear. She screamed in a low voice as her eyes suddenly dimmed. Yu Yuan. Seeing that he hadn't died, Chen Qinyan pointed the snakeskin scabbard at Wu Ziding and said sternly, "Senior Wu, he's my close friend. Please let him go." Wu Ziding's expression changed slightly when the snakeskin scabbard pointed at him. His eyes flickered. At this moment, Yu Yuan, who was unable to respond to the baleful Gales because he had suddenly suffered a heavy injury, found another way to circulate the 9 lights heaven wheel. As soon as he used this technique, the 9 dots of light in his lower dantian's Huangting acupoint suddenly shone with vigor. Who would have thought that there would be an unexpected harvest? Oh! Chen Qinyan, who was holding the snakeskin scabbard and pointing at Wu Ziding, suddenly exclaimed. Her eyes suddenly shone with a strange light as she noticed that there were 9 small balls of light in Yu Yuan's lower abdomen that ordinary people couldn't see. They were like blazing suns that contained the light of the sun. 9 points of light, containing the power of sunlight, revolve around the yellow courtyard of the Dantian, she muttered to herself. Wu Ziding, who was being pointed at by her with the snakeskin scabbard and hesitating in his heart, suddenly changed color. His expression was so shocked that it was as if he had seen a ghost in broad daylight. He and Chen Qinyan shouted almost simultaneously, 9 lights heavenly wheel. After the shout, the two looked at each other and saw the shock in each other's eyes. Senior Wu, Chen Qinyan held the snakeskin scabbard tightly and stopped pointing at him. Her eyes were filled with strangeness as she said, "Don't tell me that the flood has washed over the Dragon King's temple and that we're family but not family?" Wu Ziding's figure trembled as he looked at the current Yu Yuan, unable to say a word. The primal Yang sect had 7 mountains. The inheritances of the 7 mountains were all different. Every mountain lord had created their own great divine abilities and spiritual arts, and their names were known throughout the heavens and earth. After passing down their inheritances, the current primal Yang sect's 7 mountains were ranked as Dark Sun Mountain, Extreme Sun Mountain, Minor Sun Mountain, Phoenix Sun Mountain, Eastern Sun Mountain, and Black Sun Mountain. Among them, the Mountain Master of Extreme Sun Mountain, Mo Baichuan, was at the peak of the late stage of the Freedom Realm and had a chance to ascend to the nascent Divinity Realm. Mo Baichuan sat firmly in the 3rd place of the current Primal Yang sect. Other than the sect master of the Primal Yang sect and the Mountain Master of Dark Sun Mountain, Mo Baichuan was the one with the most weight in the sect. Extreme Yang Mountain's Mo Baichuan's most talked about original spirit art was the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel. The 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel was created by Mo Baichuan with the inheritance of Extreme Sun Mountain, standing on the shoulders of his predecessors, and painstakingly working his heart out. It was said that when Mo Baichuan had fought heavenly devils in the Starry River outside the realm of freedom, he had been surrounded by 9 flaming suns that he had refined himself. They had been revolving around him in the form of rings of light. As the Mountain Master of Extreme Sun Mountain, Mo Baichuan had only taken in 5 direct disciples. 2 of them were confirmed dead. Only his 5 direct disciples were bestowed with the cultivation art of the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel. The rest of the cultivators of Extreme Sun Mountain still cultivated other spirit arts and secret arts that had been passed down for generations in Extreme Sun Mountain. It could be said that the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel was Mo Baichuan's representative. Those who cultivated the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel were the orthodox disciples of Extreme Sun Mountain. In the future, they would be qualified to compete for the position of Mountain Master of Extreme Sun Mountain. Mo Baichuan, who sat firmly in the third place of the Primal Yang sect, was arrogant and domineering. Over the past 100 years, he had spread the word that when he successfully formed his nascent spirit in the outer realms, he would try to enter Primal Yang Mountain and replace the current sect master, who had been in seclusion for many years. Mo Baichuan was the most dazzling figure of the new generation of the Primal Yang sect. The 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel, which he had created, rose in rank among the many spirit arts and secret arts of the Primal Yang sect as his cultivation increased. Suddenly, an unknown junior from the Silver Moon Empire had actually cultivated his 9 Lights Heaven Wheel. What was going on? Wu Ziding's eyelids were trembling as he suddenly felt a strong sense of regret. Regardless of Yu Yuan's origins and background, the fact that he could cultivate the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel meant that he had some kind of connection with Extreme Sun Mountain. Even if he wasn't Mo Baichuan's direct disciple, he could be a descendant of one of his direct disciples. It was even more likely that he was a descendant of one of Mo Baichuan's other 2 direct disciples who had died. No matter what the situation was, it proved an unchangeable fact. Yu Yuan was a member of the Primal Yang sect and the successor of Extreme Sun Mountain. This was what Chen Qinyan meant when she said that the flood had rushed to the Dragon King's temple. When Wu Ziding opened his mouth, he suddenly realized that his lips were a little dry. He squeezed out a very forced smile and looked at Yu Yuan, who had been blasted into the rock by his rays of rising sun. He said, "Little brother, where did you cultivate the 9 Lights Heaven Wheel from? Is there anyone in your father's generation or ancestors who cultivated this incantation as well?" Chen Qinyan suddenly relaxed. Then, she rolled her eyes at Yu Yuan and said angrily, "What's wrong with you? Since you know so much, don't you know the origin of the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel you cultivate? You are obviously the most orthodox successor of Extreme Sun Mountain. Why don't you reveal your identity?" In her opinion, if Yu Yuan slightly revealed the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel, Wu Ziding, who was also a member of the Primal Yang sect, wouldn't dare to act recklessly. How would Wu Ziding's Eastern Sun Mountain dare to provoke Mo Baichuan's Extreme Sun Mountain? Faced with Wu Ziding's gentle question and Chen Qingyan's scolding, Yu Yuan was indifferent. All of his attention was focused on the Huangting in his lower dantian as he paid close attention to that side. After Wu Ziding asked his question, he narrowed his eyes and looked carefully. He immediately realized that Yu Yuan was using his rising sun essence and the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel to devour his own flesh, blood, spirit energy, and flame energy to knock on the yellow court. He felt a little bitter and helpless. If he attacked again, he could easily kill Yu Yuan at this critical moment. But, after seeing the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel appear, he was forced to stop. He didn't dare to attack Yu Yuan again under Chen Qingyan's watch. How could he, Wu Ziding, dare to attack the successor of Extreme Sun Mountain after learning his identity? He couldn't bear Mo Baichuan's fury and the flames of the 9 suns. Therefore, even though he knew that Yu Yuan had broken through, he didn't dare to act rashly. His regret and irritation were vented on the other people in the valley. They were used by him in the Primal Flame Mirror. The Primal Flame Mirror's world of flames burned to the heavens as wisps of souls were incinerated. Inside the valley, Long Tianshao and Guan Xianyun were on the verge of death. The 2 of them had used up most of their soul energy as the Primal Flame Mirror's power increased. Only later did they realize that the heaven-grade artifact, the Primal Flame Mirror, was constantly accumulating energy as it incinerated the 3 souls, causing the pressure on them to increase bit by bit. The reason Wu Ziding wanted to kill so many people in the valley was because he wanted the Primal Flame Mirror to continue growing stronger. He wanted to make the 2 of them quickly fall when the Primal Flame Mirror was at its strongest. Wu Ziding had once said that the Primal Flame Mirror hadn't been able to increase its grade even after passing it to him. Today, he had killed so many Een spirits and refinement realm experts in the valley because he wanted to borrow the power of those corpses and souls to increase the grade of this heaven-grade artifact. Long Tianxiao and Guan Xianyun didn't pay too much attention to Yu Yuan's strange condition. They didn't have the energy to do so. PFFF. PFFF. All of a sudden, two strange noises rang out from Yu Yuan's body. The strange sounds came one after the other. The first strange sound came from the rising sun essence light in his chest. It was instantly annihilated. All of his qi, blood, spiritual energy, and flame energy were sucked clean. The strange sound came from the rising sun essence light's explosion. The second strange sound came from Yu Yuan's dantian, the Huangting meridian. It was as if an incomparably thick wall had been smashed open by some kind of violent and tyrannical force. 9 dots of light revolved around Yu Yuan's dantian and the Huangting meridian. They were like dazzling ribbons of light, like a mysterious river of shooting stars, majestically surging and flying. Ah! Yu Yuan couldn't help but let out a low howl after the second strange sound. But after he let out the howl, his mouth was full of smiles, and his eyes were shining with a shocking light. Huangting, Huangting. The Huangting meridian had finally been opened. His nascent core had opened up all of the pores on his body. As the Huangting meridian opened, it took the initiative to absorb the relatively thin heaven and earth spiritual energy within the valley. The spiritual energy entered his dantian one by one. He could sense that his dantian was like a vast and empty world. It was the first time spiritual energy had entered it, and many mysterious changes had occurred. Every dantian had formed a small space of its own, a whole new world. The lower dantian contained spiritual energy, the middle dantian contained qi, and the upper dantian contained souls. The influx of spiritual energy meant that the Huangting meridian, which had troubled him for a long time, had finally been opened. With his dantian opened, he had stepped into the Huangting meridian. In the eyes of the experts of the Tianyuan continent and the Tranquil continent, only the Huangting meridian could be considered a true cultivator. Chapter 245. Due to the infusion of strands of spirit energy, the vast and boundless golden hall was brimming with life. After his lower dantian was opened, he could store spirit energy from now on. There were many exquisite spirit arts and skills that required the circulation of spirit energy before they could be executed. Because the Golden Hall realm could freely use spirit energy, the cultivators of the Tianyuan continent and the Tranquil continent viewed them as kindred spirit. As for the Meridian Opening and Spirit Nurture realms, because they only focused on the development of the meridians and the tempering of the flesh and bones, they were unable to channel spirit energy from the Golden Hall of the Dantian for their own use. Thus, they were not viewed as true cultivators. No matter how strong Yu Yuan's flesh and bones were tempered, in the eyes of those experts, he was only a brute or a demon beast. Once he entered the Golden Hall realm, he was a true cultivator. Feeling the unusual movements of the Golden Hall in his dantian and looking at the dazzling ribbons of light that flowed rapidly around the Golden Hall meridian, Yu Yuan's eyes blossomed with extraordinary splendor. 9 lights heaven wheel. The dazzling ribbons of light flew out in the form of 9 dots of light. The existence of these ribbons of light caused the relatively thin spirit energy of heaven and earth in Ill Wind Valley to flow into him faster. Coupled with his origin embryo, the efficiency of his lower dantian absorbing spirit energy wasn't bad. However, because the spirit energy of heaven and earth in Ill Wind Valley wasn't dense enough, it still seemed slow. But when he carefully sensed it, he clearly felt that the spirit energy that flowed into his lower dantian had many impurities and filth that were naturally removed by the 9 lights heaven wheel. When the 9 lights heaven wheel guided the spirit energy into the Golden Hall meridian, it had already undergone a round of cleansing and purification. This also caused the spirit energy that entered his lower dantian to be even purer and more refined. As expected of Mo Baichuan, the unique spirit art that made him famous in Howren is truly exquisite and mysterious. In the Golden Hall realm, the most crucial step of cultivation was to continuously guide the spirit energy of heaven and earth into the lower dantian. The lower dantian could be viewed as a strange little world. This strange little world would eventually be filled with spirit energy. The strength of the Golden Hall realm was closely related to that strange little world. In Yu Yuan's previous life, due to his own limitations, he had never been able to step onto the path of cultivation. But, in order to extend his life, he had carefully analyzed the special conditions of the various great realms of cultivation. Golden Hall realm cultivators used the abundance, refinement, and thickness of their spirit energy to measure their cultivation and combat strength. There were only two ways to enhance it. The first was to expand the strange little world within the Golden Hall aperture, causing it to become even vaster and boundless, allowing that strange little world to be able to contain even more spirit energy for his own use. However, due to the difference in talent and aptitude, everyone's haunting acupoints were innately different. For some people, after their haunting acupoints were opened, their acupoints would become abnormally vast and boundless, able to contain even more spiritual qi. Moreover, they could be opened again later on, becoming even more vast. There were also some people who were born with a smaller haunting acupoint. After it was opened, the amount of heaven and earth spirit qi they could hold would naturally be limited. The sects of the Tianyuan continent and the Tranquil continent all paid a great deal of attention to how wide their haunting acupoints were and whether or not they had the potential to continue expanding. The haunting acupoint was the most critical and important part in the evaluation of natural talent and aptitude. The exalted masters of formidable sects that were in charge of recruiting disciples all possessed special tools or unique secret techniques that were capable of discerning the future of a mortal's haunting acupoint that hadn't been opened. From there, they would make a decision. The second method of the Golden Hall realm to increase strength and combat strength was to refine spirit energy. If the haunting acupoint was innately not vast enough, then one could only refine spirit energy over and over again, causing every single strand of spirit energy to be poured in to be pure to the extreme. In this way, the haunting acupoint was innately deficient, and the spirit energy it absorbed was inferior to others. But if every strand of spirit energy was purer and more refined than others, then it wouldn't be too bad. Of course, the true top geniuses of the Tianyuan continent and Tranquil continent were geniuses of both continents. The so-called Grand Tao seeds were all haunting acupoints that were innately vast and could be opened again and again later on. Besides that, the spirit energy of heaven and earth that was absorbed into the acupoint would undergo purification over and over again, causing every single strand of spirit energy to condense into energy that was pure to the extreme. Only this way could one be an outstanding figure of the same realm, and be the most favored figure of the sect. The instant the haunting acupoint was opened, following the infusion of spirit energy, the reason Yu Yuan's eyes lit up was because he instantly understood that his cultivation talent in this life absolutely exceeded his expectations. The existence of the origin embryo had already made him realize that his talent and aptitude in this life were probably extremely good. The fact that the haunting acupoint hadn't been opened after a long time caused him to be even more convinced. The harder it was to open the haunting acupoint, the more grand and vast it was. As expected, now that the haunting acupoint was opened and spirit energy flowed in, he naturally instantly understood that he possessed extraordinary cultivation talent. The vastness of the haunting acupoint was innate. The 9 specks of light in Mo Baichuan's 9 luminaries' heavenly wheel caused the speed at which he absorbed the surrounding spirit energy to increase. Moreover, it was purified and refined within the circle of light. Such a spirit art was a divine cultivation tool to Golden Hall realm cultivators. Not only could the absorption of spirit energy be accelerated, but it could also be refined. Such characteristics were completely in line with the spirit energy reserves of the Golden Hall realm. As expected of a wondrous spirit art that even the primal Yang sect valued greatly. The 9 luminaries' heavenly wheel's absorption and refinement of the light of the rising sun also allowed Yu Yuan to understand Mo Baichuan's blatant ambition. The light of the rising sun was an extremely famous spirit art of the primal Yang sect. It was refined from the energy of the sun and had astonishing destructive power. However, this light of the rising sun was easily absorbed and refined by Mo Baichuan's 9 luminaries' heavenly wheel. It was completely suppressed and instead became the power source for the 9 luminaries' heavenly wheel. What did this mean? It meant that the 9 luminaries' heavenly wheel, which stood on the shoulders of predecessors and was created with the inheritance of extreme Yang Mountain, had been given a different meaning by Mo Baichuan from the very beginning, to be above the other mountains. Mo Baichuan wanted to reach the top of the primal Yang sect. 300 years ago, you used the 9 luminaries' heavenly wheel in exchange for a pill that I personally refined. At that time, you had already revealed your abilities, but you had yet to become the mountain master of extreme Yang Mountain. 300 years later, I wonder what realm you, Mo Baichuan, are at now. He pondered silently for a moment. After being knocked open in the Golden Hall realm, he, who should have taken the opportunity to cultivate and absorb the spirit energy of heaven and earth to fill his dantian with power, forcibly stopped. He also put an end to his many thoughts. Crack! As the rubble rolled down, he walked out of the rock wall he was embedded in. A human-shaped groove appeared in the rock wall he walked out of. Rubble piled up inside. The moment he came out of the rock wall, he abruptly raised his head. Above his head, the skinny black girl who was nailed by the short spear still had her head and shoulders bowed. However, the girl, who had been able to express countless emotions and express all her thoughts with her emerald green eyes, had lost her spirit due to the continuous casting of the short spear and the destruction of her flesh and blood. Her eyes were already closed. Only her light breathing and extremely light heartbeat allowed Yu Yuan to know that she was still alive. What Wu Ziding wanted was to capture her alive and take her away from the Ill Wind Valley to the primal Yang sect or some other place, where he could slowly strip her of her secrets. He might even leave a mark in the depths of her soul with the help of the primal Yang sect's secret magics, imprisoning and enslaving her for life. Wu Ziding didn't want her to die until he squeezed out all of her secrets. Mo Baichuan is Mo Baichuan, the primal Yang sect is the primal Yang sect and Eastern Sun Mountain. After taking a deep breath, his gaze suddenly fell on the cave where the Yin-Chi gales had been blown out. Because he had been severely injured by Wu Ziding and his chest had been hit by the sunrise essence light, the Yin-Chi gales hadn't been completely effective. Now, his chest was only aching faintly, and the yellow court in his lower dantian had been knocked open. The self-healing ability of the evil demon body tempering incantation was helping him recover. Therefore, he was going to use the same trick again. Yu Yuan? Chen Qingyan suddenly couldn't help but call out softly. He looked back. As soon as he looked back, he saw that the 3 souls of the cultivators who had been in the valley had been refined by Wu Ziding in the primal flame mirror. Their true bodies had collapsed to the ground like puppets after losing their 3 souls. The way Yu Yuan saw it, it wouldn't be long before all the cultivators from the various empires who had entered the primal flame mirror with their 3 souls died. The primal flame mirror's power would be greatly increased, and it would be able to kill Long Tianshao and Guan Xianyun, establishing the situation in the valley. Then, it would work with Mei Chirong underground to suppress Anzan Shan with a special tool and bring him back to Xuantianzong to be dealt with. Wu Ziding had probably taken the skinny, dark-skinned girl away. "Where did your 9 lights heavenly will come from?" asked Qin Qinyan seriously. Yu Yuan frowned slightly, but didn't immediately answer. After a moment of thought, he suddenly climbed up the cliff. A few seconds later, he appeared where the skinny, dark-skinned girl had been pinned and stared at the short spear. Qin Qinyan trembled. "Don't!" Wisps of souls were being burned in the primal flame mirror. Wu Ziding, who was in the middle of circulating his Yin God soul, suddenly noticed Qin Lai's movements. His expression changed slightly and he hastily said, "Don't pull it out." He could have split some of his power to attack Yu Yuan and prevent Yu Yuan from touching the short spear. However, he was afraid of Mo Baichuan of Extreme Yang Mountain, so he didn't do that. Then, he could only watch helplessly as Yu Yuan suddenly stretched out her hands and grabbed the crimson short spear that had pierced into the little girl's chest shell. Pung! Dozens of scarlet lightning bolts shot out of the short spear like fiery dragons. The fierceness and destructive power contained in the crimson lightning far exceeded that of the rising sun essence light. It abruptly moved along Yu Yuan's hands, towards his arms and towards his chest. The explosive power that could destroy and crush everything like a hot knife through butter was enough to cause Qin Qinyan's arms to explode. The reason why Qin Qinyan and Wu Ziding both spoke out to stop him was because they knew that the sputtering power from the short spear was definitely not something that the current Yu Yuan could withstand. Even if he broke through to the Golden Hall realm, it was still impossible. Yu Yuan, who was holding the short spear with both hands, sucked in a breath of cold air. Under the shocked gazes of the two people, his expression was deep and he didn't panic. The terrifying aura of dozens of scarlet lightning bolts entering his palms and flying toward his arms caused Qin Qinyan and Wu Ziding to be greatly shocked. However, Qin Lai remained unmoved. He was so calm that it was strange. Moreover, the 9 lights heavenly wheel he was circulating didn't have any effect on the explosive power of the short spear. At the critical moment, the dim sword light imprinted on his arm bone went from silence to restlessness again. Chapter 246. The short crimson spear wasn't a product of the primal Yang sect. The spiritual materials used to forge the short spear, the refined iron, and the explosive power it contained had nothing to do with the primal Yang sect. Therefore, the phenomenon of the 9 luminaries' heavenly wheel suppressing and absorbing the rising sun essence did not occur. Damn it! Wu Ziding's expression flickered, and he could no longer remain calm. Boom! 7 rainbow-colored beams of light shot out of the top of his head and interwove in midair to form a large crimson hand. That hand seemed to be trying to grab the short spear and limit its power. He was afraid that Yu Yuan would die. Qin Qinyan let out a low sigh, thinking that Yu Yuan's arms would explode under the short spear's strange power, and then his entire body would shatter. She couldn't see through the origin of the short spear, but the power it contained clearly didn't belong to the primal Yang sect. The fact that the short spear had been able to pierce through the skinny, dark-skinned girl's chest and nail her to the stone wall and continuously destroy her flesh and blood proved that it was no ordinary weapon. How could the current Yu Yuan be mentioned in the same breath as that girl? Even she couldn't withstand it. What could Yu Yuan do now that he had entered the Golden Hall stage? Whether it was Wu Ziding or Qin Qinyan, they both knew that it was too late for Yu Yuan to do anything now that he was holding the short spear. However, there were always surprises and surprises. For example, right now, holding the short crimson spear with both hands, Yu Yuan sensed dozens of crimson lightning bolts flowing through his palms, arms, and internal organs. However, he didn't panic. As the sword light that had been branded in his arms since they had left the forbidden land of the fallen moons once again grew restless, he exclaimed inwardly, "I knew you wouldn't leave me." Wu Ziding and Qin Qinyan were suddenly startled. At this moment, Long Tianxiao, who had been bitterly resisting the primal flame mirror, sensed a familiar aura. A boundless, vast, and ancient sword intent was actually born in Yu Yuan's arms. That was clearly the fallen moon Forbidden Land's secret weapon, which had worked with the heaven-sealing soul-transforming formation to ensure Yu Yuan's success in every endeavor. In that instant, Yu Yuan's arms seemed to have turned into two red-hot irons. His skin became translucent, and his arm bones seemed to be made of divine iron from the 9 heavens. If one were to magnify the sword light imprinted on the surface of the soul-dissolving pool, they would be able to see the complex sword incantations and sword styles that resembled the walls of the soul-dissolving pool. Furthermore, they contained a sword soul and a sword spirituality. Then, dozens of bolts of crimson lightning suddenly disintegrated in his red-hot arm joints. The bolts of lightning seemed to have been slashed by thousands of sharp swords. They were even more fragmented and exploded in an instant. Yu Yuan used his heavenly soul to sense it. It was as if he could see dazzling fireworks exploding from the bones of his arms. It was as if a meteor shower was raining down. Chi-chi, the soft sound was so soft that only he could hear it. Every soft sound represented the disappearance of a bolt of crimson lightning, which turned into a warm current and nourished the joints on his arm. Roar! Amidst the roar, Yu Yuan's hands sputtered with electric sparks as he pulled with all his might. The short spear that had pierced through the chest of the skinny, dark-skinned girl and nailed her to the rock wall was actually pulled out by Yu Yuan successfully. The moment the short spear left her body, her weak aura, head lowered and shoulders drooped, as if she had regained her vitality in an instant. In the chilly Wind Valley, the energy of heaven and earth surged violently. The thick miasma and poisonous fog in the inner and outer realms of the valley turned into dragons and pythons that drilled towards her. Even the clusters of colorful flames in the light shield of the deep flame poison stream formation were affected by her and flew towards her from the sky and the ground. Her eyelids trembled with her tightly closed eyes. Then, she slowly opened her eyes. The moment she opened her eyes, her emerald green eyes were still dark and lifeless. However, as the poisonous fog entered her body and the clusters of colorful flames flew towards her, it was as if a bright flame had been lit in her eyes. They suddenly brightened. After that, she glanced at Yu Yuan. That glance revealed touched, surprised, warm, forgiving, and all kinds of complicated high-level emotions. She was once again drowned by the miasma and smoke. With a crack, her petite figure disappeared into the thick poisonous fog. The fog gradually rose into the air. Inside the thick fog, translucent bones of all kinds of colors could be vaguely seen. They exploded with a mesmerizing divine light. "You!" Wu Ziding's hands were tied because of extreme Yang Mountain. When he saw the short spear being pulled out and her struggling free, his heart was filled with violent anger. He glared at Yu Yuan and scolded him with the tone of someone lecturing a junior. "Even if you are a member of Extreme Yang Mountain, even if you are the true inheritor of the 9 Lights Heavenly Wheel, you cannot ruin the great matter that our seniors of the same sect have been planning for many years." He was from Eastern Sun Mountain and possessed the cultivation of the Soul Wander realm. Of course, he was Yu Yuan's senior from the same sect. He had planned for many years and was determined to obtain this item. Now that Yu Yuan had released it, it couldn't be justified, could it? Same sect? Senior. Holding the short spear and sucking in a deep breath, Yu Yuan's expression gradually became strange. "Where did you get this short spear? Have you comprehended the spirit arts and wonders hidden inside the short spear?" The moment these words were said, Chen Qinyan was puzzled and absent-minded. She still hadn't recovered from the previous shock. Yu Yuan's hands that were holding the short spear hadn't exploded. Yu Yuan's soul hadn't been scattered by the subsequent power. Both of these were so illogical. The short spear had been successfully pulled out and was now in Yu Yuan's hands. Why was he questioning Wu Ziding, who was from the same sect? Also, what was with the ancient sword intent that seemed to have formed in Yu Yuan's arms? She was full of questions. Wu Ziding, who was reprimanding Yu Yuan, suddenly froze after hearing Yu Yuan's rhetorical question. Then, his eyes and face were filled with confusion. What are you talking about? You're asking me what I'm talking about? Yu Yuan sneered, holding the short spear. Are you playing dumb with me, Senior Wu? I don't know what you're talking about. Wu Ziding's expression was grim as his tone gradually turned cold. Yu Yuan, is it? No matter where you're from, since you've cultivated the 9 lights heavenly wheel, you're from Extreme Yang Mountain. Extreme Yang Mountain and Eastern Sun Mountain are both part of the Primal Yang sect. We're from the same place. I've held back several times after learning of your identity. Don't push your luck. But you're not from the same sect as me, Yu Yuan said with a smile. You shouldn't be from the Primal Yang sect. The Primal Flame Mirror was bestowed upon me by the head of Eastern Sun Mountain. My name is recorded in the Primal Yang sect's genealogy. How can I not be a part of the Primal Yang sect? Wu Ziding's voice suddenly rose as he flew into a rage. From the looks of it, he was so angry that he didn't even plan to give face to Mo Baichuan. This was because Yu Yuan's words had gone too far. Since you dared to cultivate the incantation in the short spear, you shouldn't be a member of the Primal Yang sect. Yu Yuan grinned as he stared at the crimson hand that Wu Ziding had condensed out of 7 pillars of rainbow light. Wu Ziding's expression flickered slightly. The crimson hand vanished without a trace in the blink of an eye. Blood-burning seal. Yu Yuan exhaled softly and said, even though it was activated with the Primal Yang sect's blazing flame incantation, the crimson hand condensed from 7 pillars of rainbow light was still the blood-burning seal. You, Wu Ziding, aren't the head of Eastern Sun Mountain. You don't have the attainment and ability to create a brand new incantation. The giant hand you condensed still has traces of the blood-burning seal, and this short spear was condensed with your own flesh aura using the blood god's blood refining incantation. So, how can you be a member of Eastern Sun Mountain, Senior Wu? Even if you are, you should be expelled. Yu Yuan laughed coldly. The moment the crimson lightning bolts within the short spear flew into his arms, a strong bloody aura quietly spread out. At that moment, he realized that the short spear's refining method was from the blood god. Then, he thought of Wu Ziding, who had come from Eastern Sun Mountain, plotting against her. It didn't make sense for a cultivator who practiced Eastern Sun Mountain's incantations to go to great lengths to get her. Only those who practiced the Primal Yang sect's secret incantations from Eastern Sun Mountain would want to kill her. They would want to get rid of the hidden danger quickly. They wouldn't want to capture her alive. There would be benefits to capturing her alive. Only with enough benefits would they not mind the trouble. If Wu Ziding, as a disciple of Eastern Sun Mountain, had secretly practiced the blood god's secret incantations, everything would make sense. Only against the Ghost Talisman sect, the sect of the blood god, the strange and evil sects that controlled poisonous creatures, and those who cultivated strange spirit arts, her survival would be of great use. Therefore, Yu Yuan boldly deduced that Wu Ziding, who claimed to be a righteous disciple of the Primal Yang sect, was either a disciple of the blood god, and had been secretly sent to the Primal Yang sect, or he had killed the blood god by chance, obtained the short spear, and secretly studied the blood god's secret incantations. Either way, as long as the Primal Yang sect learned of it, Wu Ziding would no longer have a foothold in the sect. Expulsion would be the lightest punishment. The heaviest punishment would be death. The blood-burning seal, the blood god. Chen Qinyan suddenly exclaimed helplessly. Obvious panic could be seen in the depths of her beautiful eyes. For the first time, she started to blame Yu Yuan and Yu Yuan. Why did you have to do this? Even if you knew that Wu Ziding was secretly practicing the blood god's secret incantations and refining the blood god's spiritual tools, couldn't you have pretended that you didn't know? Couldn't you have waited until the matter in Ill Wind Valley was over, everyone was out of trouble, and Wu Ziding couldn't find you? Why did you have to say it? You said it and I heard it. If Wu Ziding is really as you say, what should we do? Compared to being hunted down by the primal Yang sect, he probably won't even give face to my master. I hope not. I hope it's not what you think. Otherwise. Chen Qingyan prayed in her heart, praying that Yu Yuan's judgment was wrong, praying that Yu Yuan was just talking nonsense and that Wu Ziding wouldn't care at all. However, when she saw that Wu Ziding had started to fall silent, and that his eyes were gradually turning cold, she knew that things were bad. Yu Yuan, you damned bastard! You're going to kill me too! Chapter 247. Chen Qingyan cursed inside. When she looked at Yu Yuan again, her eyes were filled with anger and questioning. Why? Why do you have to expose me? She felt that Yu Yuan was completely unreasonable. Originally, they had been able to coexist peacefully. Wu Ziding was afraid of Mo Baichuan's power, so as long as their identities weren't exposed, she and Yu Yuan would be very safe. But now, because of Yu Yuan's well-reasoned accusations, Wu Ziding's initial confusion and fury had suddenly turned silent and calm. He took a deep breath and didn't say another word. Instead, he looked at the primal flame mirror and watched as the souls within it burned away. Poochie! Poochie! The primal flame mirror floating in the air became even more dazzling due to the burning of the souls. The scarlet flames rising from the mirror emitted a terrifying aura that caused Long Tianxiao and Guan Xianyun to tremble. The two of them had heard Yu Yuan's last words. Whether it was Long Tianxiao or Guan Xianyun, both of them instantly believed Yu Yuan's guess. They knew that Yu Yuan's guess was most likely the truth. If Wu Ziding wasn't suspicious, then the three great sects of the Tianyuan continent wouldn't have been so ruthless in Evil Wind Valley. There was no way he would have slaughtered all the cultivators from the various empires of the Qianxian continent. After all, the various empires, sects, and aristocratic families of the Qianxian continent all had connections with the three great sects. Even the primal Yang sect had to consider the face of their subordinate. They couldn't be so ruthless. But if Wu Ziding was originally from the Blood God, or if he had secretly cultivated the Blood God's secret arts, then it made sense. The followers of the Blood God had always acted this way. This was also the reason why the Blood God wasn't welcomed on the Tianyuan continent and the Tranquil continent. Bang! All of a sudden, clusters of blood clouds surged out from within the primal flame mirror. The blood clouds brought with them a pungent smell of blood as they flew toward Guan Xianyun and Long Tianxiao. Within the blood clouds, fine scarlet lightning could be seen, as well as the faint rumbling of thunder. By doing so, he was no longer trying to hide it. He had combined the Blood God's secret arts with the primal Yang sect's incantations. With a bang, Long Tianxiao's body that was sometimes small, sometimes long, and sometimes long was smashed into the ground by the blood cloud. In Yu Yuan and Chen Qingyan's eyes, Long Tianxiao's golden dragon body had dozens of golden scales exploding. In the next moment, many streams of golden light flowed out of the wounds on the dragon's body. Long Tianxiao howled in pain. The wriggling dragon body rapidly shrank and turned into a thin golden snake. Just as it was about to die, it saw a cave that led to the underground and crawled into it. Wu Ziding's face was cold and gloomy. He didn't say a word and just pointed at the cave entrance. The golden light that flowed out of Long Tianxiao's body was wrapped by the blood cloud. It seemed to be able to analyze Long Tianxiao's dragon aura and soul will. It also shot into the cave. Within the primal flame mirror, a golden, snake-like figure stealthily appeared. Long Tianxiao's golden dragon soul body's trajectory through the cave was clearly revealed. There was nowhere for it to hide. Seeing the blood cloud enter the cave, Wu Ziding relaxed. It seemed he knew Long Tianxiao was definitely dead. He once more looked at Guan Xianyun from the Guifu school. Guan Xianyun bitterly laughed. Since you're a fellow Taoist of the blood god, can you give me a way out? The Guifu school is on the tranquil continent. It's not far from the blood god's holy land. Perhaps we'll be able to meet again in the future. Wu Ziding looked at him and shook his head expressionlessly. The primal flame mirror didn't move. The corpses of the Qianxian continent's cultivators that had died because of the primal flame mirror suddenly exploded. Clumps of essence blood flew out of the exploded corpses. They seemed to be refined by some strange energy. In a dazzling manner, they condensed into a huge blood sphere below the primal flame mirror. The blood sphere emitted a heart-palpitating scarlet light. It was even pulsing strangely. At a glance, it looked like a blood sun, but also like a beating heart. Fine, fine. Guan Xianyun sighed. The ghost talismans around him flew out like butterflies. Tens of thousands of ghost talismans flew towards the huge blood sphere. Wu Ziding once more shook his head with a smile that didn't reach his eyes. Before the ghost talismans could even get close to the blood sphere, they were pierced by the scarlet light coming from the blood sphere. The talisman formations on the ghost talismans were instantly destroyed. Without the support of the talisman formations, the ghost talismans were ignited and turned to ash. The huge blood sphere floated in the air and appeared above Guan Xianyun's head. Guan Xianyun was stunned for a few seconds. Suddenly, a Yin deity flew out from the top of his head. As if it were protected by a strange talisman, it flew away at an unimaginable speed. At this moment, the thick miasma dissipated on its own, and the nether flame poison stream formation cleverly opened up a gap. With the help of the strange talisman, Guan Xianyun's Yin deity easily escaped from Ill Wind Valley. In a breath's time, it was already outside the valley. Chen Qinyan, who was still in the valley, had a blank expression on his face. At this moment, all the cultivators who had entered Ill Wind Valley had finally managed to break out. It was Guan Xianyun from the Guifu school. Whoosh! She had an unclear relationship with people from the Red Devil School, the Blood God, the Devil's Palace, and the Goblin Temple. She wanted to tell Wu Ziding that since things had already gotten to this point, he might as well let them off, but Wu Ziding ignored her. Guan Xianyun had used a strange talisman to escape from Ill Wind Valley with the help of her miasma. But that hadn't changed Wu Ziding's mind. What had truly changed Wu Ziding's expression was the current Yu Yuan. While Long Tianxiao and Guan Xianyun were fighting, Yu Yuan had unknowingly reached the cave with the short scarlet spear in his hand. That cave was where Yu Yuan had once been swinging his legs and talking to Mei Qirong. That cave was also the source of the Yin Qi astral winds. After stepping into the cave, Yu Yuan grabbed the short spear that belonged to him, turned his head around, and grinned at Nie Tian. That smile was indescribably cold and strange, causing Wu Ziding to feel extremely uneasy. He couldn't understand why this strange little fellow always made him feel uneasy. Just looking at him made him feel uncomfortable, as if he was hiding a great danger. Especially now. Yu Yuan's smile actually made him shudder. Before he could react, Yu Yuan, who was holding the short spear, suddenly flashed into the cave and disappeared. The instant Yu Yuan disappeared, the subtle connection between him and the short scarlet spear was instantly severed. Wu Ziding's expression suddenly changed. His eyes rapidly turned red as he stared at the cave. No one knew that to him, that short spear was the true treasure of his life. It was even more important than the primordial flame mirror. It was also the true source of his confidence. He had used a special secret art to temper the short spear with his own blood and qi for so many years. As long as it was connected to him, it could follow his will and instantly kill Yu Yuan. The reason why he was so calm was because of the connection between him and the short spear. After the short spear had severely injured the skinny dark-skinned girl and shot out dozens of bolts of crimson lightning at Yu Yuan, it was still in a weakened state. The reason he wasn't in a rush was because he had been secretly sending new blood and flame energy to the short spear. The reason he had condensed that large blood sphere was to supply energy to the short spear. Then, once he was ready, Yu Yuan would be caught off guard and die. But the instant Yu Yuan disappeared into the cave, the subtle connection between him and the short spear seemed to have been mercilessly severed. This shock was no small matter. Yu Yuan, Wu Ziding abandoned everyone and even ignored the primordial flame mirror. He turned into a bloody shadow and charged straight into the cave. No way. Since Qi astral winds are gushing out from there, isn't he going to die? Yu Yuan went in to provoke him and lure him in. Chen Qinyan was dumbfounded. You're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.